Happy Memorial Day. Russ Clark with you, Mortgage One Studios. Yeah, it's Memorial Day. I came in anyway. Yeah, and we'll go through that. But anybody wants to call in, 928-941-0304, talk about Memorial Day or anything else on your mind. I printed out a lot this morning just on the history of Memorial Day, and I'm going to read through it. No, I didn't highlight it like I normally do. I've read a lot of this many times, just some of the history, and I feel compelled to do it. I think sometimes we forget the history. We forget why we do Memorial Day, and it gets confused with other military days. But this is a day for visiting cemeteries, memorials to mourn the military personnel who died in the line of duty. So you can see a lot of American graves. American flags put on the graves of military personnel in national cemeteries. And I don't think I've ever been involved in one of those ceremonies. I mean, I have for the laying of the wreaths. I've emceed that one many times in Yuma as well as out in the foothills. And I'm going to be doing it again this year. I know I've already been contacted and asked just for the one out in the foothills. I don't know that they do the one in town. I don't know that we have any volunteers to do it. Winnie used to do them both, and it just got too much for her, so she scaled it down to do the one out in the foothills. The first national observance of what would become Memorial Day occurred on May 30th, 1868, known as Decoration Day. Previously, yeah, that's proclaimed by Commander-in-Chief John A. Logan of the Grand Army of the Republic, a fraternal organization of veterans to honor Union soldiers who had died in the American Civil War. The national observance followed the example of many local already that have been doing it. Observances that began between the end of the Civil War and then, the declaration of Memorial Day. National Cemetery Administration, a division of the Department of Veterans Affairs, credits Mary Ann Williams and the Ladies Memorial Association of Columbus, Georgia, with originating the idea of an annual day to decorate the graves of Civil War veterans with flowers. And official recognition as a holiday spread among states. Of course, that was before the feds got involved. Began in New York, 1873. By 1890, every Union state had adopted it. Yeah, Union states. We still had Confederate states. I mean, the war was over, but I guess there was still reconstruction and getting everything back right. The World Wars turned it into a day of remembrance for all members of the U.S. military who fought and died in service. And in 1968, Congress changed the observance to the last Monday of May. That's where we are right now. And in 1971, standardized its name as Memorial Day. So that happened. And that happened while I was in high school. Two other days celebrate those who served or are serving in the U.S. military. Armed Forces Day, which is earlier in May, a ceremonial U.S. Day of commemorating and honoring those who currently serve in the armed forces, and Veterans Day, November 11th, which is a legal holiday. A lot of cities claim to be the origination of Memorial Day. Yeah, occurred before or after the Civil War. Soldiers' graves were decorated in the U.S. before and during American Civil War. Other claims may have, less respectable and all that. Let me see. 1861, Warrenton, Virginia, was the location of the first Civil War grave to be decorated. And they got that out of an article from Richmond Times Dispatch in 1906. And Charleston, South Carolina in 1865, Columbus, Georgia in 1866, Columbus, Mississippi in 1866, and then in the north, precedents in the north, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. If you haven't been to Gettysburg, and I haven't been in many years, if you haven't been to Gettysburg, it's worth the trip. But The battle in Gettysburg was mind-boggling, loss of life, just amount of of people involved in it, the soldiers involved, on both sides, and of course, both sides Americans, but, it was just horrific. It's worth the trip, to get up there. When I went, and I went so many years ago, it's probably all changed, but there was a map laid out that would light up and show the different battles over 3 days and, uh, and how the outcome of those battles were and all that. And it was just lit with LED light, not LED, just normal light before LED was invented. So I have no idea what it looks like today. I'm sure it's been upgraded. It's probably more spectacular, probably more, probably some artificial intelligence in it by now, along with LED and a bunch of other stuff. But quite the story and quite the to walk around on the grounds out there. I just remember Pickett's charge is one of them, where just in a few minutes, like 15,000 people died. They charged the lines and right into gunfire and cannon fire. Just and it just take your breath away. It's just a tragedy, just a horrible tragedy. Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania in '64, the ladies decorated soldiers' graves and all that. National Decoration Day. We talked about that in 1868, and of course it ended up being Memorial Day. Memorial Day speeches became an occasion for veterans, politicians, which we always, of course, the politicians, ministers to commemorate the Civil War. At first, to rehash the atrocities of the enemy, it makes religion and ceremony nationalism, allowing Americans to make sense of their history in terms of sacrifice for a better nation. Um, I still think one of the better things I've read from Lincoln, that just kind of puts that time in our history, is his inaugural address, the second one, just after the Civil War. It's engraved in the Lincoln Memorial, Lincoln Monument in Washington D.C. And it's one of my favorite. Lincoln was one of my favorite, and still is, I guess, has been favorite presidents. It's just a remarkable life. Then George Washington. No, I know you thought it was Donald Trump. Donald Trump's up there. I mean, Donald Trump is doing amazing things. That and he's probably attacked more than Lincoln. Lincoln was attacked a lot, of course. Half the country hated him. Just about like Trump. Half the country. We're just not at war. That's all. Yeah, Lincoln pushed the boundaries of the presidency. Of course, at war, yeah, he didn't have a lot of choice. Trump pushes it too because he feels there's so much to be done to right this ship, and I think he's right. And of course, it's working, and a lot of things are working out. The name Memorial Day was first used in 1882, gradually became more common than Decoration Day after World War II, but was not declared the official federal law until 1967, June 28th, 1968. Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act. And this article mentions parades and poppies. I don't think anybody knows the poppies, they're still out there. They still are. But in 1915, following the Second Battle of Ypres, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, a physician with Canadian Expeditionary Forces, wrote the poem in Flanders Field. It opened in 1868. Some Southern Pacific figures began. No. Okay, I got the wrong page. Flanders Field refers to the field of poppies that grew among the soldiers' graves in Flanders, inspired by the poem. YWCA workers Monica Michael attended a YWCA Overseas War Secretaries Conferences 3 years later wearing a silk poppy pin to her coat, distributed over 24 more to other present. National American Legion adopted the poppy as its official symbol of remembrance in 1920. So, and they're still out there. I mean, I remember growing up as a kid, they seem to be much more prolific, but not there. But hopefully everybody gets today to just remember, thank the military members who gave the ultimate sacrifice, and honor them, and remember those veterans that risked it all, and then unfortunately did pay that price for our freedoms. Yeah, they were definitely. And I heard something today, something about the soldiers weren't fighting because they hated the people in front of them. They loved the people standing behind them. And I think that's the case. Well, let's get to some news. And yes, I'm gonna. I didn't invite anybody in today. Most people take the day off, enjoy it. I'm awake anyway, so I follow my routine. Doug McCain, eldest son of John McCain, he died suddenly. Now, I just got the news yesterday. Yesterday, I think that's when Meghan McCain put it out there on a on a tweet or something. He was not. He definitely wasn't prominent in his dad's career and stuff. I mean, I don't think there was any distance between them. I just don't think he was part of the politics. Unlike where you see a lot of parents, kids involved. I think Trump has his kids involved. And Douglas McCain was a stepson. It was Douglas Shep McCain. He was 66 years old. They did not disclose the cause of sudden death. He died on Wednesday. And like his stepfather, he joined the military. He was a pilot. But he was from his first marriage, Carol Shep McCain. And he flew A6s and all that. Obviously he was 66, born in 1959 in Pensacola, Florida, grew up in Jacksonville. And he did not go to the academy, but he graduated from UVA, University of Virginia, I think. And then in 1982, spent 6 years flying A6 intruders. And then became an American airline pilot, like many of those guys, they do. It's a great transition. The pilot, I mean, the airlines seek them out. Well trained, well disciplined military pilots seem to have a guaranteed career, assuming they're hiring. I've heard stories of people that can't. I mean, I can't get. They say you can't get out yet. The airlines aren't hiring or something. I don't know. I don't know. When the airlines are hiring, it's a great job, and apparently he loved it and loved flying for them. But yeah, I was surprised yesterday. In fact, I found out about it Sunday morning. I got volunteered. Yeah, I got volunteered. Gabby called me. Now, Gabby was Miss Yuma County for 2 years in a row because of COVID. And I had worked with Gabby for many years, within the Miss Yuma County pageant organization, which was just organized or just a wonderful organization. I think that did great things to help move some of these young ladies along and give them exposures to things they wouldn't be exposed to. And Gabby, like most of them, was just an exceptional young lady. She excelled within the organization and public speaking and all that. That's why she ended up being a leader within the organization and a crown. She was crowned, and for 2 years. I mean, it's pretty rigorous um, to be engaged. I guess if you win that crown, you have a whole year of representing the county to the for the organization, and all which just gives them a huge exposure to everything, and many of them spend like a couple hundred appearances over that 2 years. I mean, it's running. You're pinning that crown on your head a lot, putting the sash on. They attend things with politicians and events and everything, and it just gives them huge exposure, and they just accelerate. Gabby was no different, and I remember talking to her. She was getting, she was so nervous about a job interview in Phoenix. She had a job interview in Phoenix at a large investment company, and I can't remember, but it was one of the top ones in the nation and well respected. And she did really well. She in her interviews, and she got called into additional interviews. Well, during the last interview, she impressed them enough that they gave her an offer, and they were only hiring like one person at the time. And then they came in and found out that she wasn't old enough, which was just another, I mean, just absolutely amazing. I mean, here's a large organization that's looking for talent, and and she had not turned 21. She was like a few months away from 21. Oh, and she got the job. I mean, they made an exception for her, due to her ability and salesmanship and all that other stuff. You're selling yourself. You are. And these pageant winners, and I don't know what the impression is about everybody on the pageant winners. Pageant winners, these are ladies that study public speaking and appearances and current events, communications, how to hold a conversation, and then knowing enough about subjects to make critical thinking. And they're bright ladies, and they're driven. They want to do better. It's not about wearing the crown and the sash as much as developing your character, and they do that really well. They do it really well. Well, the reason my Sunday was tied up was because of Gabby. Gabby called me. She's married now to a military man, and she lives in San Diego. Yeah, he's an Annapolis grad, and he's overseas right now, but she's over in the San Diego area. And she called me because one of her friends, and I guess very close friends, they shared rooms together and stuff. They lived together in Phoenix, both of them being single, because she also was involved in the pageant, and pageant contestants are not married. They're not married. Uh, well, Tiffany is a young lady, and she was in town yesterday to get to spend some time in Yuma because she's the current Miss Arizona. I've met her briefly because I've just been around the pageants enough to where I've emceed them and I've worked them, and she's been in attendance at some of the things that I've emceed. But there's so many people I don't get to personally know them all. Well, mostly the girls are all talking to each other anyway. They don't go talk to the MC. That's usually not it. But just one wonderful lady. So I went and picked her up yesterday morning, and I don't know how. I mean, she's tall. I mean, very striking and tall, which is expected a little bit. But she wanted to see some parts of Yuma, and I've taken Miss Arizonas out before, driven them around to see a lot of Yuma, and I usually go and show them the stuff that other people don't. Normally, when a pageant winner like that and a Miss Arizona would come to town, you're going to go show them the new courthouse or civic center and the grand ballrooms and whatever, and the nicer hotels and good stuff, which is all great. I mean, those are great things for us to be proud of. The new city hall, the new building for the county supervisors, all of those things. Really, really wonderful. Some large businesses and all. I just take them out in my 30-year-old Suzuki and go look at a lot of go up on the levee, discuss a lot of farmers' fields and things. that are going on that, the backbone of us and, to show the immense size. We went to the confluence. And of course, at the confluence, that's where the Gila and the Colorado join. A, a wonderful location for people. They love going out there fishing, swimming, relaxing, having a few beers, and it's crowded on Memorial Day. Now we got there real early; it wasn't too crowded yet. People hadn't gotten up, but there were already people that had staked claims to certain parking spots along the river there, and so we get out and talk to them. We do get out and talk to them, and introduces Miss Arizona that just wants to get to know a little bit about our community, and I think that's a great way to see it. I do. Um, and so we drove around out there a little bit and talked to a few people, and there was a group of inner tubers, to float down. And there's a business and that does that and drops off a bunch of people right there at that area, right there on the Gila, and they float into the Colorado and then all the way down to the West Wetlands. And we talked to some of those, and they were packed up, ready to go, jump in the water and float down the river. A lazy day, as it should have been, I guess. For a Sunday morning, they wanted to just float lazy down the river, enjoy each other's company, and have a few beers and laughs. That's good for them. And we traveled through um, West Wetlands, East. Of course, we went by and saw down Main Street and the new buildings that are built. The supervisors as well as old, City Hall, which is old now. It's not new, but it's still beautiful. And we end up going down 8th into the 8th Street all the way down to the levee that out there by the Mexican border, and traveled that and talked a lot about the wall and how when it was built. And I was down there a lot during that time and saw it all. We saw one of the plaques that Donald Trump put up for the 200th mile or something along there, and discussed a lot of the problems, like around the Cocopah. The nation didn't want a wall, but they don't have the wall, which requires more coverage, but it's easier now since the wall is so prominent along the whole border now that Trump's back in. Uh, there's not a lot of places you're just going to easily walk across, and you're going to be met with lots of cameras, infrared, day, night, border patrol. I don't think it would be very successful. I don't think they don't tell you that. And we did stop and talk to it, just one agent really while we were out there. We stopped for a minute because right where the Cocopah Nation starts on the north side, right where the wall ends and that Normandy fencing is, just to stop cars. There was a couple military vehicles there. I was surprised. I didn't recognize them. They weren't Humvees or the ones I was used to looking at, or some of the newer models. But I don't know exactly what it was. I didn't even take a picture of it. But they were off road. They look rugged, huge tires, probably 30-inch tires on them or something. They kind of look like a military dune buggy, but fully fully enclosed. It wasn't open. But we parked there. I was just kind of confused. I didn't see anybody sitting there. Was like a little tent, some camps, like a camp set up somewhat. It was all open, and there's some chairs and stuff inside, but I couldn't see anybody, and I didn't see anybody, and so I stopped to get out, and there was and somebody from the army that came out and talked to us. Really nice guy. He was very very short, but he just wished we wouldn't park there. It's it's government property. We can, you can park it. You can drive out there and do what you want. Of course, I'm going to honor that real quickly, But he just said that he wished we wouldn't park there because whatever their communication with the border patrol, harass him or something, which I thought was a weird choice of words. I said, really? Yeah, and he just said, wait, yeah, just please don't. I mean, we'd prefer if you didn't stay here. And I said, okay. And we left. So I stopped at the next border patrol agent and said, we just talked to the army guys. He says you guys harass him. He said, well, I'll have to go talk to him about that. maybe he wasn't supposed to say that. I don't know. I don't really know. I asked him, why he's out there. He's just monitoring, which makes sense. Either watching stuff. but you would think they'd have enough. Border Patrol, with the lack of activity, um, I'm, uh, I'm sure I'm not somebody that they're gonna tell to just because I pull up there and ask them. I'm not gonna tell me exactly what the whole mission is, but that's why I was curious. In time we have National Guard, and this was not National Guard, he was regular Army, and at times we have that, you know, when they're overrun, there's a shortage or they need more. I wouldn't think now would be that time. And I asked the, Border Patrol agent. Now, keep in mind, they're not public relations, they're not anybody's gonna speak for the Border Patrol at all. They don't. But I just asked him some general stuff like, "Well, how's recruitment? I know the military's recruiting." But he says, "No, we're strong. Everything's good," you know, and which I believe. I think I was very truthful. But I didn't really know why the Army's out there. And there was 2 of them. I think there was another, which I didn't go over and bug them, but there was another one along there because we drove all the way down to San Luis. And I went someplace I've heard a lot about, but I've never been, and that was Eddie's down San Luis, not Eddie's here in Yuma, but the Eddie's down in San Luis. I didn't know exactly where it was, but I have GPS, so I just put it on the map, and it's out by the new border crossing, the commercial crossing. The one that's like 6, 7 miles from San Luis. Just you just keep heading east, and you'll find it. And the development down there has been huge. There's been a lot of residential and other businesses and stuff. I mean, it's really popped up in that border crossing hospital, which Amanda Gary owns. Is gorgeous. It's beautiful. I knew she was building it. I talked to her a few years ago, and she showed me the plans for it. But that thing is built down there now, and it's a beautiful building. We saw that one, and then it went into Eddie's. Now Eddie's is an outdoor dining, which the temperature was fine. It's covered like with it has a metal type structure all over it, and then there's a canvas stretched out over some. It's very attractive, but it's surrounded by containers. They put these containers at 4 sides of them and painted them. I mean, they're well done, and it's painted light blue, and it looks really good. And there's like it's kind of like a mall type dining area with a bunch of different restaurants around it. So you can get pizza, you can get hamburgers, you can get Mexican food, whatever you want. There's a bar in the middle. It looks like it would be a very hot night spot for sure. But we were there for lunch, and it was clean. It was beautiful. Somebody was always wiping things down. It's outdoors, so it's going to take. It's in the desert outdoors, so it's going to take constant. So it was clean. I was surprised. I was like, "Wow, it keeps us really clean." And the food was great, but we were the only ones there. There was another family that walked in and looked around and then left, but they didn't buy anything, I don't think. But it was hard to tell, if I had any recommendations for them. It was hard to tell because the restaurants themselves were inside the containers, and they had the windows closed or the doors were closed on all the containers. The signs were on the outside that this is pizza, this is hamburgers, and so on. Menus are on boards and all that, and you can walk up to a window and they'll open it up, but you can't see anybody. I didn't know. I had to ask. There was a lady working in there that was wiping things down, and I asked her a question. She obviously didn't speak English, but I said, she kind of pointed, oh, which restaurants were open or something like hamburgers or whatever, but you couldn't tell. I mean, they should have some kind of like flashy sign that we're open or something because I didn't know which one to walk up to. So we finally bought some Mexican food, sat down and even though it was kind of warm outside or whatever, but with the shade and the fans running and all that, it was great. I loved it. It was a good place. It's a little bit far for me to go for lunch every day, down the street, but I would visit that quite a bit. I don't know how it's going to be when it's 115. I think yesterday was about 85 or 95, 98, 99. I don't know. It was below 100, but it was nice. It was really beautiful. I thought they did a great job. But I think we showed Tiffany a lot of the outdoors. I don't know. I dropped her off about 2 o'clock. So I had her for lunch. I had her for 6, 7 hours and drove her around and talked a lot about everything that, Yuma does that I know about. And, I've interviewed a lot of people. I've known a lot. I'm exposed to a lot, and hopefully I share a lot of it on, what goes on, behind the scenes. I do behind the scenes. I don't go out and show them the stuff that they see everywhere else. And she said she's been to, all 15 counties now as Miss Arizona. And of course, my wife Helen's with me, and she asked her a question that I didn't, and I maybe I would have, but what was her talent? When Miss Arizona, Miss Yuma County, whenever the pageant, they have a talent, whether it's dance or acrobatics, gymnastics, speaking. Hers is ventriloquist, which I found interesting. Now, you remember on America's Got Talent that Darcy that ended up winning that America's Got Talent, and then she went on tour in Vegas and all that. She's a superstar now as a ventriloquist, and she sings. But Tiffany doesn't sing, but she does do the ventriloquist, and she's trained. I mean, she picked up a trainer, the same one that Darcy uses. So she took it very seriously and did very good, but she did not demonstrate it, and she didn't bring her dummy with her. Maybe next time. Maybe next time. I wish her well, and it's very uplifting to be able to take somebody with such, I don't know, such great strength, a great attention to country and God and country and the future and great talent. And a lot of times we look at people that are younger and think we're in terrible shape because they're all tweeting and looking at their cell phone. They have no idea what's going on around them. Well, look around. There's a lot of bright people out there, even young. Now she's going to be 26 shortly, so this is probably the end of her pageant career. But she's been working for many years as a public relations or marketing directors and stuff in B2B type businesses. Um, I would imagine she's highly effective because she's driven, not shy. And everywhere we walked around, we walked up to people and talked, and she was just fabulous. Of course, she's been doing this for so long. She doesn't have any hesitation. And when she's standing there with heels, she's got to be 6 foot tall or so, slender, nice, blonde lady that and puts on a crown and a sash. Just walks into walks into the West Wetlands there by the Ocean to Ocean Bridge where people are enjoying a barbecue and jumping, splashing around in the water. And she goes out to say hello and stuff. It's kind of awesome. It was kind of fun, finding it fun to be, and people want to get their picture taken with her and all that. So, yeah, nobody wanted their picture taken with me. No, no, it was Tiffany was the reason. She was a star, of course. So what a great representation for that organization and for the future. And I always wonder, I look forward to seeing what she does for a living as she moves on. Uh, just like some of the ladies out of Yuma, they just excelled. Most of them have just become great young women on top, after that, and their experiences really propel them. Let me see. The triumphal arch. Do you remember that? That's Trump's idea, the triumphal arch. It's real, and I was wondering what happened to him. He announced that thing many months ago that he was gonna build this triumphal arch, kinda like the one in France. Looks like that. Well, the Commission of Fine Arts has officially approved President Trump's plans to build the triumphal arch. It's on the outskirts of Washington. It's over the Memorial Bridge and across from the Lincoln Memorial, which I think will fit there. If you spend much time in DC, you can see lots of memorials, more than the standard top of the line, like the Washington, Lincoln, Jefferson, and all those, which, Martin Luther King and World War II are, more noteworthy. There's lots of tiny ones. It's rich in that. They're all over the place. Well, I think we need an arch. The blueprint, they've got a blueprint, and I've seen some early on, the arch had some artist renditions and some stuff out there, the possibilities of what the arch is going to be, and from very ornate to very much more ornate. It's Trump after all. The What they ended up with on the blueprint is it's produced by the Department of the Interior and envisions a triumphal arch that stands 250 feet tall. And we just drove along the border wall, which is 60 feet tall, and that's massive. This is 250 feet tall, like 200 foot taller almost. Yeah, they're 30 foot, 220 feet taller than the border wall. And if you ever go stand and look at the border wall, you can look up at it and say, I am not jumping from there. That was the idea. That's why it was 30 foot tall. It's adorned with eagles, crowned with a statue of Lady Liberty. It's a monument to America exceptionalism, a tribute to America's 250th birthday this July, which I think is wonderful. It's classic President Trump, according to this article, that America is not ashamed of its greatness and that we are willing to build things worthy of our great nation. I like it. I like it already. The Trump administration continued commitment to reviving classic architecture, and as you know, the ballroom that's being built is to the same architecture as the White House, and the classic architecture of the White House, which is timeless. It looks like it's something from Roman or Greek history or something like that, but it's a timeless architecture that is just beautiful and probably will. I would assume would stay that way. And Trump signed an executive order making federal architecture beautiful again. Of course he did. And it directs the General Services Administration to ensure new federal buildings uplift and beautify public spaces and ennoble the United States. The arch is the latest expression yet of the movement to reclaim beauty as a civic value, and I'm proud to stand behind it. That's Trump. I think that's a detail, and Trump is a very detailed guy. If you've seen any specials on him or anything, even before he was president, before he ran for president, and I remembered I've mentioned this on the show before, but his airplane was a prized possession of Trump, and there's a YouTube video out there that the captain, actually, it highlights the captain of that aircraft. That aircraft has a guy that, it's his job 24/7 to make sure that aircraft is ready, great repair, and can take off and at any moment, and all that kind of stuff. Because, a phone call could come in and the Trump plane has to fly, and it better be perfect. Well, he talks about just that, about the details of President Trump. Now, back before he was president. But the documentary basically was when the plane was up for, some routine maintenance. They had to take, the engines and do some, maintenance on them or whatever. And during that time, he took the cowlings, on the very front of the aircraft, there's a circle, on the intake. Well, that piece comes off, that whole circle, because it's the one that's going to get scratched or dinged or whatever. Just from debris or something might hit it and going into the jet engines. And so he took that off to have it completely refinished. Just details like that. And, I remember his nervousness because it was getting tied up and they sent him the wrong ones or something. I mean, like they mailed it. I think that's what it was. Like the company that did them sent them back to them, and they were not the ones that Donald Trump had. They were different ones. And they got that all switched out and taken care of. But you could see him sweating because Trump doesn't take excuses. He wants it done at a certain time. That plane had to be ready to fly at a certain time. And while I was in there, Trump had said that the carpeting that was in the galley was two pieces spliced together, maybe when they originally made it. And that's kind of normal in a house. You don't buy a piece of carpet that fits the whole house. So, you have to sew parts of it together. He wanted that removed so there was no seam. He didn't want seams, which just kind of amazing, but that kind of detail. But this captain would go through and make sure that there was nothing out of place, no speck of dust, because Trump, and they showed he was in the documentary when he walks in the plane, He did an inspection like he was the pilot, walking through every bit of that plane to make sure everything was perfect for his guest that he invited on that plane, that there was nothing out of place, that everything was exactly as it should be. Um, and 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 you would think that that's the way he runs his business, that's the way he's running the country. Details matter. So I grew a great appreciation for them, and that would for him that at that point, and seeing that captain sweating like this thing has to be back together. And when they take these planes down, they take every cover off. I mean, inside the cabin, all that plastic that is covering the wires and all the stuff up above and all the bulkheads, everything, all that comes off. They do it. No, he's sweating. He's got to get that all back exactly perfect and get that plane in the air because he's got a date. You got to meet the president on this date. We're committed to being there, and that plane's got to get together. And in a time we live when things come in late, they don't come in on time. There's always great excuses. Well, we couldn't get this on time. We couldn't get that on time. So it's going to be delay. And that wasn't acceptable. Working with Trump, that wasn't acceptable. And the captain made that clear that, we made this commitment. We're going to find a way to make it happen. And I love guys like that. They don't try to do something. They do it. They get it done. And that plane was ready and on time and got there. And President Trump was happy with it. And you got the impression from the pilot that if there was any one thing out of place, it would have been noticed and discussed. So anyway, he's involved in making federal architecture beautiful again, too. And I guarantee you, just from looking at his nature, there's going to be a lot of work on him looking at it to make sure those details are correct, details are right. Now, they want to insure the federal buildings. Now, so start thinking about the federal buildings. Now, there's some federal buildings out there that are absolutely gorgeous. The White House, the Capitol, a lot of them. And there's some of them that just, well, you look at the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Monument, and all that stuff. It's just beautiful. But you look at some of the other federal buildings, they're like crap. And this article points it out. It does. Now, it also points out something that says that elites, elitists, they sneer at the arch. Would you believe that grand civic monuments are somehow gaudy or even less unbelievably fantastic? It says that New Yorker's among the snobbiest magazine in circulation accused President Trump's arch of belonging to an architecture of autocracy. Because I guess if it's beautiful, you're an autocrat or something like that. This article points out that recent modernist architecture in Washington, D.C. that Trump administration aims to supplant is ugly, authoritarian, and I think it is authoritarian. Some of these structures that are ugly are just authoritarian, like a communist country or something. And it sticks out like a sore thumb. The J. Edgar Hoover building, a brutalist disaster. Now it's been evacuated now. The J. Edgar Hoover. It's an all concrete structure and deteriorating. So it's falling apart. It's probably going to be taken down. I don't know. The Humphrey building looks like something out of the Soviet era nightmare. And I guess we kind of mirrored that in a lot of the architecture over the time. Some of them where it was just minimalist and it looked like a Soviet era nightmare. I mean, those are the ones that I think should be called, autocracy, autocrats and stuff, those kinds of buildings. The Dr. Ben Carson called the HUD building 10 floors of basement. Hideous buildings in the heart of our nation's capital, which there's no reason to make it hideous. No, it still costs a lot of money to put up a wall in a hideous building as it does one that is pleasing. These hideous buildings in the heart of our nation's capital lower expectations about our government and make citizens feel small. The Triumphal Arch reverses that message entirely. It says the Americans great, we're not embarrassed to show it. I look forward to seeing the construction of the Triumphal Arch over the next several months. I'm hopeful that it will be one of many projects along the East Wing Ballroom that restore beauty to federal architecture. Earlier this year, I introduced the Beautifying Federal Civic Architecture Act to codify into law that President Trump has already established by executive order. My bill will ensure that classical buildings like the Triumphal Arch are built in Washington, D.C. and around the country for many years to come. Because beautiful architecture shouldn't be reserved for Washington residents. And in the past, it hasn't been. I grew up in a trailer park in Columbia City, Indiana. My neighborhood didn't look like the National Mall, but I didn't have to travel far to find similar buildings. The Whitley County Courthouse, built in 1888, sat right in the middle of our town square, its dome rising above everything else. Each time I saw it, I felt inspired. The courthouse told me that the town mattered and that the law mattered, that something grander than everyday life was happening inside those limestone walls. Congress should enshrine these architectural examples into law so that more Americans can enjoy monuments like Triumphal Arch and courthouse like the Whitley County Courthouse. These are beautiful buildings that will last. They are worth it, and so is this country. Now, I don't know who wrote that. I didn't write down. I didn't write the author of that comment. Obviously, he's a legislator, but somehow in my notes I didn't get his name. But I think he's right. And of course, driving around Yuma yesterday with Miss Yuma, with Miss Arizona, not Miss Yuma County, Miss Arizona, Tiffany. And driving around, we've got a lot of buildings in Yuma. I think the new supervisor's building is absolutely gorgeous. I think they did a great job with it. I was kind of surprised. I didn't have any expectations one or the other. I was already off the board. I was not involved at all in any of that, and didn't see it. But I think they did a beautiful job with it. I do. I think still the city hall looks great. I know when it was built, so many people were saying the Taj Mahal and all that stuff, and it was ridiculous to spend money on it and all that. But I think it sets a standard. I think it's got a little bit too much glass for something out in the middle of the desert. I think we pay a little more, electric bill for air conditioning. We probably should because of that glass. But I think it's a wonderful building, and I think they did a nice job with it. The architecture's nice. It's pleasant to be in the city hall. In spite of the unpleasantness of some of the conversations of the day. Yeah, when you're in politics, it's a contact sport. So yeah, get ready for that. Usually, if people don't feel the chambers down there with one of the meetings just because they're so extremely happy with everything. They don't. No, there's going to be discussions, but you want it to look like it does. You want it to look like somebody cared when they put it all together. So I kind of agree with this. I do. I agree that it needs to be done well, and something that the city can be proud of and be happy with. So I'm glad to see that because, and I know that some of the buildings in DC, they look crappy. Honestly though, I probably didn't focus on it. I didn't think about it. I just overlooked it. But because of Trump and him pointing it out, I'm like, well, yeah, you're right. But unlike Trump, I didn't pay attention to that detail. He's a builder. He pays attention. You may have heard over the weekend that there was a man fatally shot at the White House. It was secret. He was shot by Secret Service agents. He opened. I mean, the gunman opened fire at Secret Service agents at one of the security checkpoints on Saturday, and which is just the amount of violence, the amount of thinking that I can solve things by picking up a gun and doing this, and it needs to stop. And we're going to talk about it all the time, and I'm going to keep mentioning it. But this attitude from primarily the left of anger and hate, and it just needs to calm down. But it's coming from the leadership. It's coming from the leadership, particularly in the Democrat Party, that just refuses to stand down. And it's not just against Trump, it's about anybody white. President Biden, incorporated in speeches all the time that, the worst threat to democracy is Donald Trump. The worst threat to democracy is white supremacy. It just made you feel hopeless all the time. Like, we got to fight this white supremacist, whatever that is. And, well, it is whatever the Southern Poverty Law Center said it is, apparently. and they promoted it by propping it up and paying for white supremacy. And we'll get more into that. And that's going to be more of a topic conversation going forward, as I got in trouble for that. And I always just wondered, well, where are these white nationalists, and where is this white supremacy really having, where are they headquarters or something? Where is the KKK even and stuff, and all the stuff that the left have been pushing like ever. And they're doing it more. I mean, it's spooling up. It is not calming down, particularly with the success in the Supreme Court of undoing some laws that probably never should have been written in the first place, including these, I say laws. The last one was the voting rights. Where there was a misinterpretation of what was on the book about building districts, gerrymandering and stuff, and the Voting Rights Act was misinterpreted back. They did, well, now we've got the Voting Rights Act. We need to have some districts set up for minorities only, based on, DNA, skin color, whatever, but majority minority districts, which was never what it was written up for. It was misinterpreted right back then, and it never was challenged. Well, Trump challenged it. It's not legal. Racism is giving somebody an advantage or a disadvantage based on race. It's pretty simple stuff. It's racism, and it's not legal. You can't do it legally. You can't just say, well, you're from whatever nationality. We either favor or disfavor you based on your nationality or your race. And a lot of times people are aghast if something happens, and like if you're a black man or something, and something happens, oh my God, it's because he's black. It's because of his race, and they elevate the sympathy and everything for something bad that happens, and they try to balance that out by saying, okay, well, we're going to give you a favorite son or a favorability on points on hiring and practices or something, that's just racism to stop racism, which doesn't make sense. And the Supreme Court said so. They agree with it, and that's caused hatred galore. Let's take a call from Sandy. Good morning, Sandy.
Good morning.
How are you?
One of the greatest reveals recently is that the Southern Poverty Law Center was behind all this white supremacist. They ginned it up because we were right.
Yeah.
We're looking around, we're not seeing it. They ginned it up and then pretended to fight against it. So
right,
people need to never forget that.
Because they existed to fight against it, but there wasn't enough of an enemy. They had to create an enemy and then fight against it.
Right.
That's just nuts. I did not suspect
and
that.
which party knew about it?
Democrats.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So again, I hope more and more and more Americans turn away from the Democrat Party and to the Republican Party. That's my message for Memorial Day.
That's a good message. And I think you're winning that fight. It's just a trickle. It's not a rush as much, but it's continuous.
No. Don't know if it'll be enough, but we need to keep saying it because we do see a lot of hate coming from the left. And all I can figure is they think that's the winning message, but it doesn't do anything for the country or the people that follow them.
Here's what I'm worried about on the upcoming election. The left is so angry. Of course, they're angry all the time, but they're going to win at all costs. I mean, they will put everything out there. In fact, that's the party that overwhelmingly thinks more anyway, that violence is an answer if you have to. So violence, cheating, whatever they got to do because they know that they're righteous and they should be winning, and it's not fair that they're not. And I don't know how many shenanigans are going to play on the voting, on destruction, whatever. I don't trust it. They
That I agree. That's a big concern,
yeah.
which is why so many people are upset with Soon that he won't get that Save America Act passed, even if they had to get rid of the filibuster. Because, and you need to do it in time because the vote is critical.
Yeah.
And you're right. And they're too much into violence, and you can see it only takes a few people. And they never put themselves out other than to say a lot of bad stuff. And I just still wish people had shut down Maxine Waters years ago, because it started with her. Actually started with Harry Reid. Because when Harry Reid lied about Romney's taxes, and then he told the media that didn't matter, we won.
Right.
It just communicated right then to the media and to the Democrats: lie, cheat, steal, gin up violence, any of that's okay.
Yeah.
That was just the kind of the beginning, and it probably started sooner than that. But
I'm sure
anyway,
it did, but we saw an
bad.
escalation, Sandy. We did see an escalation in it, and it continued. It's continuing to this day to escalate. And Hakeem Jeffries, and is one of the worst. He's just screaming hate every day.
Well, he is kind of like a wannabe gang member.
Yeah.
Who'll do stuff like that. He's a wannabe, wants to be a big guy. And he knows that he's not, so he figures this is the only way to like throw a tantrum, always be preaching hate. And I can't help but think there just aren't any adults in the room in the Democrat Party.
No.
I don't mean age-wise, I mean thinking-wise. There's just no adults in that party. Because that's not how they should be acting at all.
Well, and it's shocking they bring Chuck Schumer, who's gotten worse and worse over the years. He's just very quick to jump up and join with it's Jim Crow 2.0 and all that ridiculousness. And I don't know who it was. It was one of the representatives that's a Republican, a black Republican, that did a video on Jim Crow, on what it was and what the Democrats say it is. Which shows.
Oh, I think I know who you mean.
Yeah, I forget who it was.
It wasn't Byron Donalds. It was.
Yeah.
Dadgummit. I think the guy from Texas, but I can't.
Sounds right. I can't remember, but the graphics were, it demonstrated, canines keeping people out of buildings and all the Jim Crow stuff that was going on. And then today, where it just shows people voting.
Right.
There is
asking
no
them
Jim
for
Crow.
their ID.
Yeah, where's your ID?
Right.
Which everybody has.
And he did it in a hearing, which I thought was really great. I just wish it had gotten more coverage, so people could really see.
Yeah, it's on the official record. And of course, I'm sure the Democrats all walked out. They didn't want to look at it. Don't confuse me with facts.
Right. Well, the misinformation is the biggest problem, and the lies. And, just like that lady the other day that was doing comment after comment after comment, and you and Dean were you guys just handle yourself real well. She's just misinformed.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that's purposeful. They want to justify their hate. And it's just so misguided. So
and they don't want to talk about
Go ahead.
They don't really want to talk about the real issues. So rather than talk about the necessity for voter identification, they're going to label us something else so we can have an argument about Jim Crow and not about voter identification.
Right. And they say Chuck Schumer is just worried about AOC, but he's just none of them are like the Democrats from the past. They just aren't. they're just unhinged. And like I say, there's no adult in the room in their heads. And they might not even be like that in real life, but it doesn't matter. They have a leadership role, and they have decided to use that to lie to their followers, which then causes people to be screwed up. And then you have some of them, like that guy, I guess, from Saturday, he was mentally ill, and he was supposed to stay away from the White House, but he shouldn't have even been let out to go on the street.
I think he had a restraining order.
Somehow.
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah.
And, but the left pays a price. You know what the price they pay is unhappiness. And, I've read reports about the number of Democrats, registered Democrats, their chances of being depressed or chances of needing therapy and all are so much hugely different than Republicans.
Correct. They don't have a good view on life.
No, it's negative.
And they don't, very negative. Even, I guess, I sent you, well, I'm not sure if I did.
You sent me
Margaret
everything.
Brennan was trying to get these two military guys who had received the Medal of Honors to speak negatively about the country. And they didn't. They were very uplifting.
Right.
But that's the mindset of the media, which has definitely decided, we're going to support the Democrat Party and all their hate because that's what we like. And it's really just not good. I'm glad for programs like yours and so many others who have a voice out there. And I'm really grateful for all the Americans that recognize what's right and what's wrong. That's the deal. And you got to wonder, were these people that are so screwed up, what happened when they were growing up? Or is it just a recent, maybe they were raised really, really good, and then they've been recently demented by somehow the hypnosis or the Democrats' message.
Well, it's you start becoming who you hang around. Now, I grew up a Democrat. My parents were Democrat, and so I registered Democrat, not knowing anything. But because because Reagan was elected and I was paying attention, it just changed my world. It's just like, wait a minute, I've been lied to because he's not anything they say he was. And that's when I became a Republican, because that's when I first became aware. But most people, you're going to listen to your family, your uncles, and all that. And my parents all but disowned me when I became a Republican.
Well, my parents, when they were young, were Democrats, and I try to look back at information, and some of that might have been that was a means of getting into the right business type groups and to get a job. I know that sounds mercenary.
No, it's
but
not.
I have to wonder if that's, I think that may have been what was going on. But we had in our, in some of our members, because most of them really didn't talk about it that much, we had a divide where some believed one way and others believed the other way. And as far as I know, none of them disowned each other.
And that's good, but it's worse in some of the people I talk of color, some of the black families I know who friends are Republicans. Really, it's very violent. Some of those households, like you've betrayed your race. You can't, that kind of stuff.
Well, it's a one-way thing.
Yeah.
Because the Democrats and the media say it's okay if you're a Democrat to be a bully, because that's what we're seeing. Hakeem Jeffries is just a bully. Unfortunately, he's a bully that people are listening to, and then they do their behavior in a similar manner. So I really believe it's coming from one side. Now, the Republican side, and the family might just say, well, we're just going to stay away from them, but they don't go out of their way to bully their other family members. I don't know. I'm talking, my relatives, I'm talking about in the past. It was so long ago. I just can't believe those brothers would have, I never saw any evidence those brothers were hateful towards each other.
Well, we saw a lot of
I'm talking about great uncles. There's just no way. I never saw that.
We saw a lot of politicians pushing it, though. Like, if your family, if you can't talk to them politically at Thanksgiving, don't go and stuff like that.
Obama,
they just openly
who was the big mover of that was Obama.
Yeah, and it's all this cancel culture. And I know there has been some surveys done on who's most apt to cancel somebody, someone that's a Republican or Democrat. Now that's not even close. I mean, it's the left is complete cancel. No, and so when you said something like they may have stayed Democrats to say in grace for jobs or whatever, absolutely true in a lot of areas. I'm quite sure that's absolutely true. I know people that professionally have to kind of stay neutral because you don't want to piss off a Democrat because then you're going to be out. You can't say the word MAGA in a lot of rooms. You'll be excluded. But yet the Republicans don't act like that.
No.
We want to have conversations.
And the Democrats, like I'm saying, the Democrats might not have acted that way in the past, but they might have. The KKK came from the Democrat Party when they had lost different abilities to, I guess, bully or different rights. So they kept creating groups so they could go out and bully people, harm people, hang people, kill people.
I was going to say they killed, lynched, threatened, and that was in the South.
Correct.
I mean, it was just amazing, and that's because after the Civil War they started having elected officials that were black. Congressmen were black in the South, and they wiped that out and scared everybody from running, and because they just killed people, attacked, burned down houses. They were brutal. They were not going to have any blacks run anything. And that gets forgotten in history a little bit. We should remember that.
Correct. And he brought that up at that hearing. And I'll get his name and call you back. It'll just take me a little while to look.
I got time.
It may take me more than a little while because sometimes it takes me a while, but because he needs to be recognized for doing that. And Ted Cruz has been doing a good job of being outspoken and explaining stuff. I love our side because they're factual.
Yeah.
And that Brandon Gill, I can remember his name. He is just so very good at asking questions. And the people at the hearings that are from the left, they probably hate that guy because he's good at it, stays calm.
Yeah.
He amazes me because he's not an old man. He's a young man. Ted Cruz is not super old either. And these Byron Donalds, who for some reason I can remember now, and the other guy, they're young men. So our party's filled with a lot of young men, and old men, and young women and older women. And they there's just something totally different about them. And I think President Trump's got his handle right.
Well,
President Trump's agenda and the Republican Party's agenda is, I'll use my word, it's righteous.
And he hasn't
lost
any.
It's a very good agenda.
He hasn't lost any Republicans. And the left keeps saying, "Oh, Magnus breaking up, and there's infighting and all that." And then CNN does a poll on it, and they haven't lost anybody.
It's because the media focuses on Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, and somebody else. They focus on these people that are not true to being a Republican, being MAGA. They're just, something happened to them. They broke, maybe because they weren't successful. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene was upset because President Trump didn't see that she had enough support to run for Senate. And so he told her, but he didn't do it publicly. He told her initially behind the scene, but that pissed her off so much, she just decided she had to go crazy.
She became about power all of a sudden. She was about helping.
Correct.
And then she's about her personal power. And she found that in the Democrat Party, even though she hasn't changed parties, but she only goes on Democrat type stations and stuff.
Right, to spread. See, when they're broken, what do? They spread hate. And discontent.
I feel bad about
and so
MTG. I liked her, even though she was kind of outrageous. I liked her, and she just flipped like crazy.
Right.
Amazing, but she's having a field day of fun because everyone on the left loves her, but they will quickly ditch her when she's not useful.
Right. That's what people need to remember regarding John McCain. They were all supportive of him until he was running against a Democrat. And then, my goodness, they were awful to him.
Well, same with Trump. They loved Trump
media
until he came down the staircase, the escalator.
Right. Well, even Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar were hugging him and everything. I wish Barbara Walters was still around.
Yeah.
Now, that lady was a pretty good lady. I don't think she would be like Wacko Whoopie or Wacko Joy or any of the other wackos. I'm glad I don't watch those shows.
I see the clips
I see
because
clips, but I couldn't watch it.
No,
I just can't do it.
You can't sit there an hour. Good for you.
No way. So anyway, have a good day.
Thank you, ma'am.
We need to. One of my, I didn't meet him. I think. Well, I could have when I was little bitty, but too little. My Uncle Charles Self died in Korea after fighting in World War II. So that's one who actually died in action. We have other that would fit more for the veterans than Memorial Day because they survived and came back to their families.
Well,
but Charles, it didn't happen.
Most people did come back, but the loss is huge, and it's I don't have a lot in the family that loss. I've had a lot of people join the military, a lot that I got to know, and maybe I have more than I know because I just was never told.
Right. Well, I wish I could go back, and I have done some genealogy work, but there's some people, some men on my great grandmother's side that were her brothers, and I've had my husband look at it. Which war do you think these guys were in? And we're not exactly sure. But they fought. I don't know if they died in combat or if they survived. Just getting information can be really difficult.
There's a lot
you have to go back in time.
There's a lot of great ancestry websites out there that have so much information. If your family's at all traced, and it's out there,
but you have to be careful because some of that information is wrong. Like for instance, one of my grandmothers, her death date on the tombstone's wrong, and because it's on the tombstone, Find a Grave has that, and I know it's wrong because I was here when she died, and she died the day, I think, after my birthday. My grandfather died a different year, the day before my birthday, so I'm going to always remember that, but that's always going to be wrong. Just like I made a mistake on my mother's obituary, and so that's always going to be wrong because it's always out there. So you can't necessarily go by that. And some old stuff I was looking at for some of the family, there was like, this person died out in the ocean coming from Wales or coming from Germany. I'm not sure which one it was. And the others, no, they were born in the ocean, or they were born in New York. As you go back in time, a lot of the information is just not right.
A lot of the ones that will have actual documents that you can pull up and read.
That would be helpful.
Well, I've got those.
That's helpful.
I'm an ancestor of someone called of the Elshire family, and Elshire, dating back to pre-Revolutionary War, and there's been magazines written about the Elshires and all kinds of stuff, and that Elshire clan, which I'm related to every single one of them, but the documentation and all that is rich. But John Elshire, who came from Prussia, real name Elshite, but upon entering the United States, changed it to Elshire, and then he was the only Elshire that come from overseas because it was a new name, and so I'm related to all of them, and they have Elshire reunions and all that kind of stuff, which I attended when I was a kid, I guess, but I don't remember them. But they're
a lot of it. Is a family member or family members willing to get that information together?
Well, this all has tons of documentation, articles, obituaries from newspapers. In fact, John Elshire Jr. fought in the Revolutionary War, the son of John Elshire. And he crossed the Delaware with George Washington as an officer. And, I've got his obituaries and all that kind of stuff. And I'm a direct descendant.
But see, somebody gathered that.
Oh, gosh, over the years.
If you're looking for... Yeah.
I didn't
Somebody gathered that together because newspaper articles, even if you go on the internet, are not necessarily easy to get. It's just my dad did some work with a cousin of mine. I had that to look at, and then my sister sent me some stuff, and I was looking at that, and so some things I could pick out and say, no, that's not correct about Ben Franklin Wagner. And that was funny. The Wagners, a group of them, one of them was George Washington Wagner, Ben Franklin Wagner, and I can't remember the others, but not all of that information, unfortunately, was right.
Well,
and then correcting it can be wrong, but
I'm sure
somebody in your family did a lot of work, and they deserve your admiration.
They've been doing it for hundreds of years. They've been going after it, and because it's one of those legacy names, the Daughters of the Revolutionary, and all that kind of stuff that they belong to. I've never been involved in any of that, but
well, is that like Elshire? Is that how you spell it?
Elshire?
That's what I'm hearing. But
yeah,
I don't always hear right.
I think it is
Elshire.
Yeah, I'll send you a copy of his obituary. It's quite interesting. But the newspaper at the time, I mean, it must have taken a page, out of the newspaper. His whole life is in the obituary. It's not a short little blurb, for John Elshire Jr. that actually fought in the Revolutionary War. His was.
Well, this isn't a good tidbit, but when I was reading through stuff, and I wish I could get my other family, because I shared all this, I mean, thousands of pictures and stuff with family members, but not everybody goes and looks at it. But on the genealogy, there's a story that one of the wives, this is, a long time ago, ran away from the husband. I thought, God, I wonder if that's true or not. It probably is. It probably
some of those stories don't get written,
No, I don't know who, somebody had to know about it and write it down, but not everything gets written.
No.
But have a good day.
Take care.
And everybody needs to focus on remembering. My family, a lot of them will focus even on their loved ones, even though it's Veterans Day for them, not Memorial Day, but they don't see a distinction. They'd rather celebrate 2 days, because they have passed away, even though they returned. And I was thinking some of them came back home and there were children born after that never would have been born. If my grandfather on my mother's side hadn't come back from World War I wouldn't be here.
I knew
because
a guy.
she wouldn't be here. I didn't think about that till today.
That's exactly right.
My God.
But I knew a guy that was in Vietnam for 3 years. He was in a prison camp and for 3 years, and he got released. He came home to a new 6-month-old baby. So I don't know how that happens. I don't know.
But somebody else.
Well, quite possibly. But I guarantee
that can be really terrible. That
it was not.
I won't say anything personally other than it ruined one man that I know.
It did not ruin him. He was the happiest thing he saw. I mean, he was ecstatic that he had a son, regardless of the situation. Okay. He was ecstatic.
Well, good for him.
Yeah, I mean, what a guy, right? What a man to be able to.
Well, the person I'm thinking of, I think the biggest problem was the way she handled things.
Yeah,
and that we need to remember. Sometimes the families sacrifice a lot. And some women are better at being supportive of their husband, and probably some men more supportive of their wives if they're in the military. Because it's not an easy thing to do.
High divorce rates in the military too. But we're all sinners and we all have issues and we all have weaknesses. But forgiveness is in the heart of some people, and then obviously in his. And he saw the bigger picture of a 6-month-old that needed a dad, and he supplied it.
Well, good for him.
Isn't that something?
Good for him.
All right.
That's a wonderful story right there, and a good thing to end on. So,
take care.
Have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
There's a few things she mentioned about, some of the people that are conservative that are a thorn in the side to. Lefties. One of them, Scott Jennings. I don't know if people pay attention to that on CNN, but he's just absolutely brilliant. Doesn't get angry, doesn't get mad, but he's got just patience and facts on his side, and drives the people on CNN crazy with just reality. He's coming to Yuma, believe it or not. And it's Tanya Wright that set this up. She's been helping out with the Republican Party. She doesn't hold an office right now. It doesn't matter. She does more work than most. But she has set up, she is graduated from Doty London. It's an organization for women only that help them become stronger advocates for community and for politics, and a lot of Dodie London. I've known a lot of them that have graduated and then gone on to be county supervisors and other things. But she worked out to get Scott Jennings in town, which is quite a feat. I mean, someone like him is going to generally going to charge big bucks to go do a speaking engagement. You're not going to get somebody like that inside Yuma. Well, he's coming to Yuma, and it is going to be. We're going to set something up. It's going to be this fall, and I'll get you more on dates and more on stuff like that. It's going to be this fall, where he's going to be the keynote speaker at a dinner type deal that we're going to get together, and there will be tickets sold and all to arrive and go there, and you can buy a book and have pictures taken with him and have him sign it and all that kind of stuff and all that stuff with Scott Jennings, who is remarkably great debater, great historian. I mean, he's studying. He has a lot of knowledge. When he sits down at the table in CNN, he doesn't need notes. He knows, and I think he's one of the best ones out there right now. I've admired Charlie Kirk on what he's done and his ability just on the cuff when he goes out to these colleges and stuff. Well, Scott Jennings is kind of like that on the news side of things. That doesn't go to colleges, too, I know about, but he does travel around the country and does these kinds of engagements and stuff to share some of that knowledge and experiences and stuff. So if you can break away, and I don't know the dates yet. I mean, the dates have been set. I don't have them in front of me, the dates. I don't know the venue completely yet. We've got a few of them that we're looking at and discussing. I think he could command a bigger audience than 200. I think even in Yuma we could get more than 200 people. So I would like to see a venue they probably haven't looked at yet, but I don't know. I don't know what we're in discussions right now on what to do with that Scott Jennings thing, but I think it's going to be good for Yuma. The more we get this kind of people around to talk to and all that and support them and support the party, this will be a fundraiser for the Republican Party at the same time. I mean, we should be able to, we have to pay we have to pay for these kinds of things, transportation, hotel bills, and all that kind of stuff. We got to pay for these things, but we can get enough in the audience to not only do that, but have some funds for the Republican Party so that we can help promote conservative ideals and conservative politicians and stuff. Let me mention some from a listener. I can't believe the listeners are listening, but they are on Memorial Day, and it is Memorial Day. It's a day off, which shakes up routines. A lot of people sleep in. And my listener writes, and we were talking about architecture and Donald Trump wanting to bring back some of the architecture. He wrote, the first designs of the White House was done by a French architect. It was too grand for Washington's vision and rejected it. I don't know that history, but it sounds like very, very plausible, very probable, I would imagine. And Washington had a lot of say into it. He was the president, just like Trump's the president. So, and then that's why it's so ridiculous that the Congress right now says you can't do that because you need congressional approval. Well, Washington didn't need congressional approval, and neither does Trump on that kind of issue. Well, let me interrupt that and talk to Sandy again. Yes, Sandy.
Hi, Wesley Hunt's the name of the congressman you were talking about. Yeah. And I went ahead and sent you the video again. Okay. In case anyone in your audience would like for you to share it, it'll be right there for you.
Thank you. Okay. I know I'd already seen it because of you, but thank you.
Okay, all very right. Good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let me see, getting back to these questions about Washington. I don't doubt it, but Washington had input on that. And Washington rejects says it was something like Versailles, and he wanted something that represented the American ideal of no longer being under monarchy. Well, we ended up with the White House, which is the architectural looks, classic Roman, Greek, something, European type architecture, probably not French, maybe. But I think it was. I think if Washington's was laid out by French architects or French developers and stuff, I think, the roads, that's why I get lost. I want something to represent American ideal. The new additions seem to bring back the royalty flavor. Actually, the new additions are in keeping with the current architecture. And Trump was very specific on that it's going to keep with the current architecture. And he might be talking about some of the interior type stuff, maybe. I don't know, but I think it's probably keeping with the architecture. Wonder if Washington would approve. Don't know, but possibly. Dirty politics and fractionalism started right after the election in Washington. Of course it did. Politics has always been a contact sport. It used to be more polite. I think it's grown. The aggressiveness, the anger. We don't have blue dog Democrats, and we don't have the crossing of the aisle so much anymore. It's heavily driven by the whips in the Senate, House, and all that stuff. The anger and the stupid stuff is just so big now that it's grown. But yeah, even Washington newspapers of the day would put cartoons out about Washington that were non-flattering and stuff. Of course they did. Jefferson, tried to get around some of the constitutional protections of the media because he was upset about it, which is kind of ironic. Of course he couldn't, but he tried, and many politicians do. And of course, interestingly, the Constitution sets up three branches of government to keep check and balance and all that. Well, because they know the nature of man. The nature of man is to take power, and the nature of man is to get your way and all that kind of stuff. And presidents that even were helping with the Constitution and stuff would get in and try to get around some of that because of frustration of I can't move fast enough, I can't do it fast enough, and or the press is being unreasonable. Washington too, Jefferson, all of them. It says, don't forget Jefferson and Madison went behind Washington's back to smear him. I don't remember any of that. I don't have that history. But sounds like it to me, of course. It's not new. I mean, human nature is human nature, and it happens. It happened then, I'm quite sure. I mean, I know of some. I don't know about that specific, what he's talking about, but of course it happens. It happens today, and it happens with Miss Green that's smearing Trump now after they were best buds and she was MAGA as anybody. That somehow personal glory or pride, getting your way. I don't know what it all is. It does sink in. I mean, it hits people. It does. Maybe it's the nature of American politics, or it's anybody. It's people. It's not just politics. It's people, Bob. It shows its ugly head in politics probably more than anywhere else, but it's in businesses and hierarchies in businesses and getting promoted, not getting promoted, and all of those things. It's out there. And these checks and balances that the United States has put in are supposed to, help us. It's not a perfect system. It's just the best system in the world to help us. And of course, they did not go after Washington, I doubt, about the architecture of the White House. But yeah, they're going after Trump for the ballroom. Yeah, you got to have it approved. We're going to, do all that. Which is ridiculous because every president before him has done it. And that White House, it still has the same look it did back when Washington built it. Although if you look at the early pictures, it's strictly the White House. There's no wings. There's no additions. There's nothing but farmland, just like stuck in the middle of a pasture when it was built. But that White House is still, the facade of it is still intact. The interior is nothing like it was. It was completely, even during World War II, it was gutted. They just kept the walls up. And they took bulldozers inside, and everything was removed. It was completely gutted during that time. Truman, I think it was Truman that did all this during Truman that did that. And you get pictures of that on the internet. You can take a look at it, and you see the White House. It looks the same on the outside. You get inside, and there's tractor trailers, and there's tractors in there pushing dirt around and backhoes and all kinds of stuff going on. As they're putting in new foundational supports and stuff because it was getting heavy. But keep in mind, they built the White House. It didn't have plumbing. It didn't have electricity. It didn't have toilets, bathrooms. None of it. It just didn't exist. But you go in the White House now, you can go to the ladies' room. There is one because it's all been redone. So what it was when Washington, the external, they're duplicating. So yeah, the dirty politics exists. It existed with Lincoln. If you know anything about Lincoln, smart guy, witty, strong, tall guy, champion wrestler within his ranks when he was in the military and type stuff like that. He was a wrestler and quite a storyteller and very outgoing and self-taught. He was a nasty guy. Yeah, he used a pen name to make fun of people, to goat them and just discard them and discredit them and stuff like that. And he would write messages and drop them around town using his pen name. Well, it's a small town. I guess the secret didn't last forever, and then they knew it was Lincoln. And now he got challenged to a duel over it. He was challenged to a duel. And he went to the duel. I mean, you're a gentleman, you can't run away, I guess. That was the day. That was the time. He went there, and they loaded the pistols and all that kind of stuff. And the seconds, they always have a second, they called it off, and they made it true that no guns were fired, to my knowledge, what I read. But it changed him. And at that time, he stopped the stupid. He stopped the derogatory, and he was nothing but positive. In fact, you read Lincoln stuff, and it sounds like, why so polite? Well, he considered it aggressive at the time. And when he was shot, there was a letter, I think it was on his possession, I think it was, that he wrote on how upset he was with one of his generals, McClellan or something. And he wrote this nasty about, you always retreat, you never take advantage, and all that kind of stuff. He never mailed it. He just wasn't that person. He changed up generals a lot. I mean, he'd fire people like Trump, and to get results until he found Grant. In fact, if the history's right, and I don't know if it's folk tale or if it's reality, but Grant was a known alcoholic. He drank a lot, and when Lincoln was promoted him, it was as being a great general and winning battles and all that. It was well, he's a drunkard, sir, and all that stuff. And he says, well, then buy it, then everyone should be drinking whiskey, because the guy's winning. It sounds real. I don't remember where I read that, if that was actual communication. Like Sandy says, some of that stuff gets expanded, like the fish stories. It was this big, whatever. But it sounds real. Getting back to Donald Trump on the White House, the criminal that tried to break into there. After this, it's Nasser Best. He's a 21-year-old Maryland man. Another Maryland man should have been deported, but I don't know what his background is. I have no idea if he was. There was no suggestion he's an illegal alien at all. Is what I'm saying. But I just remember calling him a Maryland man made me think of the MS-13 guy. He's just a Maryland dad. He's an MS-13 guy. But anyway, Donald Trump writes, thank you to our great Secret Service and law enforcement for the swift and professional action taken this evening against a gunman near the White House who had a violent history and a possible obsession with our country's most cherished structure. It might have been after Trump, but I don't know. Maybe it was after the structure. But the gunman is dead after an exchange of gunfire with Secret Service agents near the White House gates. He's a 21-year-old guy. He was known to the Secret Service at the White House complex because in 2025, in July, he walked into a restricted area at the White House, the pedestrian access control post, which there's quite a few of them, and ignored commands to stop. And when you go to those pedestrian access control posts, they're just that. They're at the perimeters, and it's like going through an airport security. You walk in, and you have to have a ticket. No, not a ticket. You don't get one. You just tell them your name, and you're in the computers as to what your business is and all that kind of stuff. It's it's prearranged, and then you just go through like a security, like you would at an airport. Magtometers and all that kind of stuff. But you don't do that in the White House. It's these perimeters. You do that, So he wouldn't listen to him. He just walked right through. He claimed he was Jesus Christ, and he wanted to get arrested. I guess they helped him in that. And it says, according to the filing, so that means he's arrested. He was arrested on unlawful entry in that incident. So they already knew he was. It also said he's been involuntarily committed in June 2025 after obstructing vehicle entry into the White House complex. So he had some problem going on over there. On Saturday, he approached checkpoint near 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue. Shortly after 6 p.m., he pulled a gun from a bag, opened fire on Secret Service officers. Of course, they returned fire and struck Best, and he was taken to a hospital where he later died. There was a bystander that was wounded. It doesn't say anything about the bystander, who it was. But the officials are not saying who fired the round that struck that person or released the person's condition. And I'd be curious, as to who shot the guy, if it was the perpetrator or Secret Service agents trying to stop him. Trump said this event is 1 month removed from the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting and goes to show how important it is for all future presidents to get what will be the most safe and structured space of its kind ever built in Washington, D.C. The national security of our country demands. And of course, he's talking about the ballroom. Now, the ballroom is going to be built because we need a ballroom. But that project has also become bomb shelter and security. And I think is it 6 stories below ground or something? I think, is that right? I think I got that right. 6 stories of what they're calling, bomb-proof and all that security zones and safe zones and bunkers type stuff below the ballroom. And the ballroom itself, they're talking about bulletproof glass. It's 4 inches thick. Anti-terrorism type weapons, anti-drone type weapons in the roof and the roofing material for not just the ballroom, but for that entire surrounding area and everything, which already exists in some capacity. We don't know what, because they don't tell us what that is, but they do have some. They had a lockdown of the White House after this shooting at 6 o'clock. By 6:46, it was removed. It was lifted. I guess they figured they had everything under control. The FBI and Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives were assisting the Secret Service and Metropolitan Police Department in the investigation. And I guess that would be standard protocol. Everybody comes in, make sure there's nothing overlooked, nothing in the guy's background or whatever. Oh, okay. I think some of my stories got mixed up. At least page 2. Oh, okay. I see what I did. That's all right. I figured it out. Let's talk about UFOs just for a minute. I don't know where I stand on this stuff. Do I believe there's unidentified flying objects? Yes, I do. We've covered enough of them up, and the government has worked to cover things up. And it's obvious there's some cover-ups and stuff at times. In fact, there's some of it that's admitted that, they try to discredit these UFO hunters by making up stories and having the UFO hunters take the stories on and then discredit the stories because they were jokes. So a lot of that stuff's happened over the years, so it makes me think there's more there that they don't want out. Well, there was a new one out that just came out. I'm trying to think of this guy's name. Dr. Hal Perthoff. He's a CIA-funded researcher and former advanced aerospace weapons systems guy. There's claims now there's remains of 4 separate species of alien life. And I'm skeptical. I don't know if this is something that's being released to make everybody look stupid or if it's real. But I'll tell you what it is. But they say it's sending shockwaves through the UFO disclosure movement. Of course it is. Those UFO guys are looking for this kind of stuff. They eat it up. Drumming up conversations surrounding the government's knowledge of otherworldly life. and that's always been discussed, that the government has covered up. The government knows more than they tell us, and that we're not smart enough or advanced enough to be able to put it into perspective, and that we'd panic and mayhem would ensue. Maybe it would. Uh, but Dr. Hal here, he says, given the level of quality of their technology, if they didn't want to be seen, we wouldn't be seeing them. So it seems like, I would say, there's evidence that for whatever reason, they're wanting to be seen. He said people who have been involved in recoveries have said that there are at least four separate types. Now, I've not had direct access to them, but I believe the people who I talk to for separate types of life. So he's disclosing this, but he's not a firsthand witness. He's not a guy that actually saw it himself. And he did not elaborate on the species types of suspected aliens. His former colleague, Dr. Eric Davis, previously revealed they included Nordics, Greys, Insectoids, and Reptilians. Are the four types. And it sounds like, a sci-fi movie or South Park series to me. It's I just want to interrupt for a second. I got a note here from Andrew. He said, "What is that uniform behind me?" Behind me, and I'm in Mortgage One Studios, and it's owned by Derek and Egbert. Derek Egbert owns it, and he is a Caballero, which I am, and that was one of the original uniforms from the Caballeros de Yuma, where they would wear that on greetings and stuff like that. I don't think anyone's put that uniform on for 30, 40 years. I don't think so. I was a Caballero. I think it started in before 2000 in the late 1990s. I became a Caballero. I was never given that uniform or had to buy that uniform. And I say given. No Caballero is given anything. You buy everything. But you see the red jackets now with a tie and everything is what we wear. Just looks like a suit jacket. Before that, it was more Hispanic looking, and so he keeps it here in the studio. In fact, we've discussed should it really be behind me? But I don't care for now. It may change in the future, but that's what it is. In fact, if you look at the Caballero logo, when you go to Midnight at the Oasis or something, the logo still has a Caballero wearing that uniform. That was the logo design, and it's kept. It's kept. So that's the uniform from the logo. Okay, getting back to aliens, which don't wear that. They don't wear that uniform. No. You see. He's citing intelligence reports last year. Davis reportedly claimed that each of the biological life forms pulled from supposed UFO wreckages, similar to humans in appearance, since they possess 2 arms and 2 pair of legs. The revelation does not come to a surprise to experts within the UFO disclosure. How can you be an expert in UFO disclosures? I mean, if there is physical evidence, and I believe there could be, I'm not ruling it out by any means, but I don't think many people have seen it probably because not enough stories get out there. Ken Heckenlively, he says, depending upon the UFO researchers that I've talked to, they talk about there being many variations of those 4 life forms. I've also heard that there are amphibian type UFOs or aliens. So yes, there are claims that there are many different species visiting us. So even amphibians, it sounds like Star Trek or something. I mean, does Star Trek have that kind of insight? Of the 4 alien species believed to have been previously recovered by U.S. officials, the Nordics bear the most resemblance to humans. Greys, which I think of those are the most common in UFO movies and stuff. You see, somebody with a gray skin, big eyes, all that kind of stuff. The Greys are often believed to consist of small, massive-eyed, hairless creatures. The most commonly described aliens are the Greys. And there's been a lot of discussions about whether they're essentially the designed beings of our world. They seem to have the easiest time moving around, and they're the most commonly sighted aliens. probably true. Reptilians are reportedly depicted as lizard-like creatures with scales and long tails, and often walk on two legs. Captain Kirk ran into those guys. Yeah, there's the original Captain Kirk back in the 60s ran into the lizard-like creatures. Reptilians are reported depicted as lizard scale. I got that. The fourth species, insectoids, reportedly resembling a praying mantis, and I think I've seen those depicted in other movies, I guess. And bug-like beings. The insectoids seem to be rarely seen, but when they are described by people, they're often described as beings in charge, which is a little bit terrifying to me. President Donald Trump administration has increased transparency regarding the UFO discoveries, with a second batch of UFO documents being released by the Pentagon on Friday. Nick Viley said, the thing I always say is it's hard to tell a little bit of the truth. Once you start telling the truth, you got to tell it all. So I really think that the Trump administration has shown that they are interested in getting the truth out. I think some of the releases have been truly remarkable. In 2023, Air Force intelligence officer and the UAP task force, I guess that's like a UFO, but it's unidentified something. I forget what AP stands for, but it's same thing. David Grush, he says he gave congressional testimony claiming that the federal government possessed non-human biologics, pulled from dozens of downed UFOs. So he gave testimony to that, and he's an intelligence officer with the Air Force. It reportedly stems from Farrow's documentary Age of Disclosure, in which individuals involved in the alleged crash retrieval program provided information surrounding the discoveries. Roswell's the most, I guess, famous one. If you've ever been to Roswell, I flew in there one day on a private plane and a small airport, and it was just filled with UFO, stuff to buy. Like stuffed aliens or stuff like that. So the town really, they capitalize on it. It's a UFO type place to go. UFO restaurants and all that stuff. Elements of our government have recovered those crashes, and they've gotten out of that technology of non-human origins, and in some cases, non-human bodies that were on these craft. It may not be that these aliens are demons, but maybe they fundamentally different ways of approaching the world that we would find objectionable. Maybe there are good reasons to stay apart from each other. Maybe they just figured out that there would be such inevitable clashes between, because we have different views of morality, and any contact should be extremely limited. Yeah, we have differences on fellow humans. I don't know what we would on the reptilians. I don't know if any of this. It's true, but I'll tell you a story about one that I didn't personally witness, but when UAP was in town, and APE, automotive parts or some APE, called APE. Jensen had that, and he became a good friend, and I was on his board of directors at the time. Even he was quite the entrepreneur. He's making starters and alternators and selling them to AutoZone, Napa, and others like that. And he had a wonderful organization, just-in-time inventories, very cutting edge. I mean, stuff that really surprised me. And I'd been in the automotive industry for quite a while, and I visited a lot of rebuilders, and he was just way ahead of everybody. And he had an interesting background. We got to know each other, and we I went with him to a lot of events, in Atlanta, Georgia, and other places all over the place. Atlanta, because that's the home base for Napa, and he was there to sell the product. And I went with him, and as a Napa store owner, they asked me, Russ, what are you here for? Are you working with us? You working with these guys? What are you doing? I was trying to help both, actually. He spent his time as an engineer in rocket science, literally rocket science. And I forget which company it was he was working for, but they were building the Polaris missile that shoots out of a submarine, and they were having problems with it because they couldn't build a nose cone on the thing strong enough to take the pressures, obviously being fired in water, and take the pressures and be light enough to fly. No, they built it thick enough and heavy enough it could withstand the pressures, but it wouldn't go airborne like that, like it should. So they were having a dilemma: how do you make it light and still be able to perform and not collapse? And he said him and one of the other guys, the lead guys, and he was one of the lead scientists in their office, and they had a visit from a bureaucracy, from a bureaucrat government guy, which he described as a pimple-faced guy with pocket protectors, in his 20s or something, walked in and threw some items on his desk and asked him, could he use these and reverse engineer them? And one was carbon fiber. And he explained it to me. He said it looked like charcoal or something, but it was very light, very strong. And it really scratched their head. They didn't understand how it could be so light and so strong. And of course, that's what they were looking for. And they reverse engineered it to find it. It was carbon, and it didn't make sense because carbon's brittle. You couldn't make something strong like that out of carbon. And of course, there's a woven matting in it and all that stuff. They duplicated it, and it became the nose cone for the missile. And then the bureaucrat, the pimple-faced guy with pocket protectors, came back and picked it up and took it away from him. And apparently it was in a filing cabinet in a town just outside Las Vegas. That'd be Groom Lake and all that kind of stuff. They also brought something that was just fibrous, and you could make light travel through it and bend light with it. And it was fiber optics. They couldn't find a use for it other than it was kind of fun to play with, because you could put light in it and then move the fiber optics all around and make it, light go in any direction you want. They didn't even think about it for communications, which is how we know it today, as the fiber optics is used in communications. But he said they came out of a wreck and it was over there, and him and his partner argued forever on whether it came from an alien spacecraft wreckage, because he thought that bureaucrat could have developed it, and that was nothing they'd ever seen before. Well, my friend Ray Jensen was sure that it came from something like a spacecraft like Roswell. His partner was never convinced, so they had that argument forever. And I would talk to Ray, and we'd be flying on his private plane to Georgia or something quite a bit, and we'd have a lot of those types of discussions, about anti-gravity stuff that he worked on, and as well as space, aliens and stuff, which he never was involved in seeing any aliens at all. But he believed that the material that he received, that they reverse engineered, came from that. And those are the only two materials he ever saw. But I just share that with you, that Ray was convinced that there were aliens, and he was a rocket scientist. I think he still lives in Phoenix. When APE got closed down, he ended up. APE was hugely successful, growing like crazy, and he wanted an influx of cash. He wanted to grow even more, because his project of just-in-time inventory was spectacular, and it was really great for the industry, and he was be able to produce things cheaper and not carry these big, bulky inventories. And so he had a lot of people wanting to buy in, and he ended up going with AC Delco, I think. And they bought 51% of it and left him with 49%, so they took control. And they brought in a new person to run it with him as an advisor. And of course, they locked up in differences and stuff. And they started changing things and took away the things that Ray had worked on to make it cost effective and all that. And he was old school and wanted to make it more inventory and stuff. And I guess they ended up suing each other. and the whole thing dissolved and was sold off in parts, and it doesn't exist anymore. It's just gone. Over that. And Ray regrets. I remember talking to him years later. He he ended up moving to Florida, because while he was being sued and suing people, and people suing him, he moved to Florida because if he lost lawsuits, then they couldn't take his house. So he had a house in Florida that he lived in. And when it was all settled, he moved back to Phoenix. So I know he lived in Phoenix, but I haven't talked to him in years. I don't know where Ray Jensen is at this point, but a brilliant guy, great friend. I loved the guy, and I had a great time working with him, and just a brilliant engineer and a gruff old guy. If you ever met him, he was gruff, he kept people at a distance normally. I guess he didn't scare me. He did, and since it's Memorial Day, I'll tell you a story about how I finally met him. Bill Esmeyer was a friend in town. He was a fellow Caballero, and it was a banker, and he was Ray Jensen's banker. Which, when I found out he was Ray Jensen's banker, I wanted to meet him because I'm in the automotive industry. I own the Napa stores, and he sells, and he was not approachable. I knew that. I knew he was angry and not approachable. And so I asked Esmeyer to introduce me, which he calls me one day, and he said, look, Ray's having lunch at the country club at noon today. Why don't you meet me there at 1:15, and I'll introduce you to Ray. I said, great. Now, he wasn't having lunch with Ray. He was having lunch with someone else or whatever. So at some point, Bill got the courage to go over and introduce me. And I say courage because he was always worried about Ray. He wanted to make sure he didn't offend him. He wanted to make sure they didn't lose business and everything because Ray was volatile, I guess. I saw it. I never had any experience of that. But other than when I first met him, we went over to the table. He stood up and he's smoking a cigar, drinking a cocktail or something. And I explained I was with Napa. He says, well, why should I care? What difference does that make to me? Type stuff. And I told him, I didn't offend me. I expected it. And I said, because I'm interested in what you're interested in. And I'd like to see your facility. I'd like to see your process. I understand you guys are doing something very different. And he paused for a second. And he says, well, I guess if you came by, I could probably give you 5 minutes. I said, well, thank you so much. It's kind of like in that movie Dumb and Dumber when the guy asks a girl if there's a chance for a date. She says 1 in a million. And he says, great, I've got a chance then. And he starts celebrating and he had a chance. Well, I felt the same way. I had a chance. I had 5 minutes with Ray. So within the next few days, I picked my son up. He's in the 2nd grade. And it's not hot. It's kind of like fall or something, and temperatures are good. So I drive over to APE, and I left him in my pickup truck with a hat on it. It was a Napa truck. in the parking lot, and I say, hey, buddy, I'm going to run in here, and I guarantee you I'll be back in 5 minutes. Because Ray said I could have 5 minutes, right? So I walk in, and I said, I'm here to see Ray Jensen. And, well, who are you? I said, I'm Russ from Napa. And pretty soon someone came out and says, oh, Ray's ready to see you. Come on in, which I thought I'd probably get a cold shoulder, but it came right in. I walked in the room, and he had a smile on his face, and all of a sudden it turned into a look of disappointment, like, what the hell are you doing here? He thought I was from Napa Corporate because he was trying to do business with Napa Corporate to sell starters and alternators. And I said, I'm here to take the tour of the plant. He said, well, I don't have time right now because I got these other things I got to do, and I got appointments to see and all that stuff. And I said, I completely understand that. And I just wanted 5 minutes. You said I could have 5 minutes at some point. If you could squeeze that in, I'd greatly appreciate it. And he looked at me and paused for a second. He says, I think I could do that. And I said, awesome. So we hit out into into his building area where they're building these starters and alternators. And I'm amazed, and I'm starting to ask him questions about the processes and stuff, which I was pretty familiar with on how it's done at a lot of the competitors, on how he does it and how he arranges it and stuff like that. And he became intrigued because I was legitimately interested. I wasn't trying to, befriend Ray so I could get a loan or anything. I wasn't looking for that. I just wanted some of his knowledge. And I spent 2 hours with him. He spent 2 hours showing me around that plant. And it was phenomenal concepts and attention to detail, kind of like, he was like an Elon Musk-like guy that if the system worked really well, but he could improve it by 2%, he would move tables around, to knock off a few seconds. He was that kind of detail guy. And, I learned a lot from him over the years. And I had to go explain to my son who was in the car for 2 hours. I never told Ray I had a kid in the car for 2 hours. And it was not hot. It was not. It was a cool weather outside. So, I think he was mad at me. He was mad at me. But I did it for the greater good, son. It was a greater good. I had to get to know this Ray Jensen. And I ended up being friends with him, and I helped him sell Napa to buy Sergeant Altmaters. I went with him on sales, but I did not work for the corporation at all. I wanted to help him because I thought it was good for everybody, and he put me on the board of directors for his board of directors and all that. And during the sale, he was looking to get me away from doing the Napa and taking over some of the operations at APE, but that all obviously fell apart. And to the new people, I did not have a MBA. I stopped college after my initial degree, and I said, "Well, Ray, that's not a problem. Give me a year, I'll have an MBA. It's not hard to obtain." But they just weren't. They weren't interested. Ray was. Ray thought that I would be the proper successor because I understood it. I was curious. I was interested, and that didn't work out. And instead, they put somebody in there that was just a jerk. According to Ray, I didn't work with him. I knew him. I met him, but I didn't work with him. And of course, that thing completely fell apart because of the conflict. And Ray sued them first. Ray sued them because they did not fulfill, and they sued back. And then the lawyers won, and APE was completely auctioned off and gone and doesn't exist, which was a shame. I think he had a winning program, a winning business, and I think the industry killed it. They killed it instead of making it work. I think it was innovative as Tesla is to automotive. I think it was it was on that line of innovations of what he was doing, but they didn't understand it, didn't want to. Okay, I'm done with that. It's good to remember Ray. I did like him. Let's talk about Iran for a little bit. Oh, and the phone lines are open, 928-344-5258. If you have a question or you find that I get something wrong, please let me know. Apparently they have another making of a treaty. Nobody can keep up with it. You can't keep up with it. It's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. And this is a typical Iranian games, according to many that have dealt with them over the last 47 years. And many people coming forward and saying that this is what they do. They stall, they frustrate, they stall, they frustrate. Then you make a deal with them that's stupid. It's not good for us, but at least it's a deal. And Obama did that. Obama made a nuclear deal, which was a terrible deal. Trump doesn't want that. So there's going to be more stalling and more putting off and all that kind of stuff. Trump says he's given Iran another 5, 6, 7 days. Now, remember, this whole thing started off as a 2-week ceasefire. I don't know. What are we in, 7, 8 weeks? It's been a while. The framework agreement with Iran is 95% there as of Sunday. The negotiators are still haggling over language, detailing Tehran's nuclear stockpile and the Strait of Hormuz. So those are the two big ones. Those are the two that apparently, and according to all conversations that Trump has had with the media and everyone else, that is not up for debate. The Strait of Hormuz will be open. You will not have any kind of tolls or control of turning an international waterway into your personal backyard. I mean, even though it's only 21 miles wide, it's recognized around the world as international waterway and always has been. Just 4 miles of it, I think, 4 miles wide, right in the middle. But and Marco Rubio has mentioned before too, that if you allow that international waterway to become a private, like a toll road, like it was a canal. Now, a canal is a whole different story. That's a man-made structure. That's very expensive to operate, and there is a price to use that. There's a toll. There's no man-made structure. This is just natural water, and they just want to claim it and say, I want to claim the international part and make it mine, and you got to pay me $1 million to get through it. That's good work when you can get it, but that's not going to go well with Trump. At least that's what he says. He says we have a deal on the nuclear stockpile, and the Strait of Hormuz are being negotiated. We're negotiating language. That's according to one of the officials, reiterating the administration's no dust, no dollars, and that dust refers to the nuclear dust, which presumably got mostly blown up during the bombing of that nuclear site. They think it was all there, but some of it may have been transported. Not completely sure. He says we have the opportunity to make a deal that will lower costs for Americans while ensuring Iranians do not get a nuclear weapon. We are not going to do that. A bad deal for sure. We have opportunity and can resume military strikes if a deal is not reached. Well, that's what they keep saying. That we're going to return to military strikes if it's not reached. But so the Iranians keep testing it and testing it and testing it and keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And no military strikes have really happened. So maybe these guys are the master negotiators. And I know Trump's a master negotiator. And I guess you got master negotiator, undefeated, master on both sides. It's like a championship for the undefeated. And they're trying to see who blinks. Trump has instructed negotiators Sunday not to rush into a deal. And I think that's important that he says publicly, because the Iranians, who understand our systems, understand our politics, understand everything, they know there's an election coming up, and they know that this oil price, this gas price, and this continued military presence is going to weigh on the population, and the United States population doesn't have any patience for it, and that it's going to cause Trump to lose elections or lose control of the House, which is already a long shot. I mean, it's already a tough deal to do. Would make it nearly impossible if the Iranians hold out and they think they can, and that Trump won't bomb them. I guess. Who knows what's really going on? Who knows what's going on with Trump? Other than, I'm sure he's as aware that Iranians are more on the hot seat than we are as far as civil uprisings and cities being taken over by opposition parties, internal strife within the Guard, Revolutionary Guard, and the different spokesmen that have come up with the contrary messaging. We know that that's all going on. So it's who's going to blink first, and Trump has stated that the reason he hasn't gone is that it's been requested through Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and those guys that are neighbors that are helping, and he wants to be patient and work within their social structures and their sense of right, wrong, and all that stuff too. And they've become real allies over the years. So Saudi Arabia, we've got military bases over there and stuff, and they're allies. So there's a real trust. I respect it, but I'm as impatient as anybody. I kept looking at the news this weekend thinking I'm going to see that there's been a strike, a kinetic strike somewhere, and that they took out more stuff, but it has not happened. Another article that Iran has threatened to quit nuclear treaty break naval blockade in Strait of Hormuz. And it's Mohsen Razel, a military advisor to the supreme leader, Khamenei, which, if he's still alive, this guy's a spokesman. I don't know if he's channeling him or if they really talk to him. I don't know. He says Iran's management of the Strait of Hormuz ends 50 years of insecurity in the Persian Gulf. And he says U.S. sanctions also said that Iran has strong reasons for keeping control over the strait. He says he does. He says, claiming that Tehran's objective is to prevent the Persian Gulf from becoming a center for military deployments and instability. It's already got instability, and you're the military, but this is what they say. And of course, Turkey controls the strait that goes into the Baltic Sea from the Mediterranean. And I think that's much narrower and it's much more under control. And during this war with Ukraine, they did not let warships travel. That's just part of the deals. That's up front. Everybody knows it. And in case of that, they weren't going to let warships. So Russia could not resupply the warships that they were sunk and stuff like that, or get them out. Even they can't traverse that area where they're at wars. And it sounds like they were saying that we should be something like that because we can bring stability just like Turkey brings stability. That's not what it says, but that was my imagination that went there, because that's the only other place I know on the planet that does that. And then the Iran's official IRGC spokesman, that's the Revolutionary Guard, Al Shigar, says he warned if Hormuz is attacked, Tehran's forces would break the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports. He says at the same time, he threatened Iran leaving the non-proliferation of nuclear weapon. Like if you do that, then we're not going to be agreeing to a non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. But these kind of bolsterings are common. I guess it's like Russia threatening nuclear war every time he doesn't get his way with Ukraine. It says if the enemy attacks the Strait of Hormuz, we will break the naval blockade and may withdraw from the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. So those saber rattlings, like I'm in charge here, I'm in control, not Trump, not the U.S. Navy, not any of you guys. I'm in control. Well, oil prices fell at the news that there was some kind of negotiations that was 95% there that might be okay deal, which I think is premature because we've seen it come, we've seen it go, we've seen it in, we've seen it out. I'm not 100% sold. I watched a lot of commentators that are excited about it. Like, they say, I was listening to one that said oil plummeted. So, yeah, it's down like $4.64 to 98.9 cents a barrel on the U.S. West Texas immediate crude fell 442 to 92.18 a barrel. Of course, that's the one they're going to put out there is not the Brent, but the Texas, which is always a little cheaper for some reason. Marco Rubio is also talking about Hezbollah. You can't forget that at the same time this Iran thing's going on, Israel has been dealing with Hezbollah. You don't hear much about Gaza anymore. Is that? I guess that's you don't even hear about the Houthis much anymore. I know the Houthis are still out there. But Hezbollah has been under attack, and Hezbollah's been doing stuff. But according to Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Sunday, Hezbollah, he accused them of trying to plunge Lebanon further into turmoil, condemning calls by its leaders to overthrow the government. I didn't really know that was going on, but according to Rubio, the Hezbollah is trying to overthrow the government in Lebanon, which they've operated out of Lebanon for decades, and they get their money from Iran. They get their substance from Iran, who supported them, and the Houthis and the boys in Gaza, the whole bit. That was all coming out of Iran, and they've cut them off. I mean, they don't have money for themselves right now. So not selling any oil and having everything locked up, and I mean, finances and everything else is being frozen. These guys are wanting to take over the country now. Maybe that's and maybe that's the reason it was done. I don't know. First, I've heard that they were looking to overthrow Lebanon itself, take over the country. Maybe they see there's money in the country. Maybe we can take it from them because we're not going to get it from Iran. That's my guess. But Rubio says Hezbollah has ignored repeated calls from Lebanon's government to respect the ceasefire and halt attacks. And since Trump has been back in power, I understand that Lebanon has been more aggressive in telling Hezbollah to get out and to stop it and to turn things over and to do things. And maybe that also is why they're saying, well, we'll just take you over. We'll take over the government. But instead, it has continued firing on Israeli positions and moving fighters and weapons into southern Lebanon. This is a deliberate campaign to destabilize the country and maintain its power at the expense of the future of the Lebanese people. Lebanon's government was working towards recovery, reconstruction, and stability with full support of the United States. Hezbollah, by contrast, is actively trying to drag Lebanon back into chaos and destruction. And the era in which terrorism group could hold an entire nation hostage is coming to an end, and that's according to Rubio. That they're not gonna keep having that. That's I like it, and it's scary because we're over there. We don't have boots on the ground. We're not invading everything, but we're supporting these kind of things in a new way that I don't think we've done in the past. We send troops in, which I think has not been successful in the past. Not in the past decades. We seem to not do well with that. And this patient things is a new addition, maybe. Trump talks a little bit about the Iran deal, a little bit, and he said Sunday that his administration reaches with Iran would be good and proper, I mean, a deal, and sharply contrasted with the Obama nuclear agreement. He said, if I make a deal with Iran, it will be good and proper one, not the one made by Obama, which gave Iran massive amounts of cash and a clear and open path to nuclear weapons. Our deal is the exact opposite, but nobody has seen it or knows what it is. It isn't even fully negotiated yet. So don't listen to the losers who are critical about something they know nothing about. Unlike those before me who should have solved this problem many years ago, I don't make bad deals. And I think he's up against one of the dealest tough makers ever. They don't care if the population dies. They don't care if most of the people die. They don't care. It seems like as long as they exist as an organization, we're going to keep fighting you. Also, is a weird one, but there was an article that came out that Iran says that oil exports cannot be reduced to zero. You can't reduce them to zero because we have secret routes. I don't know how you can secretly. I mean, maybe there's a pipelines or rail trucks, maybe that could take it over land. Nothing is going to move the quantities that they need. But an economic advisor to the Iranian president, Masoud Peshkian, said Sunday that they can't reduce to zero, despite sanctions, despite the pressure, and none of that. We have alternative export routes and oil infrastructure beyond its main hub, the Karg Island, which we all know is 95% of it. So they've got a 5% route somewhere else. We have other routes and other oil resources and other regions for exports, which we are not going to reveal. I don't think you have to. I think we probably already know. I would assume that we know. Our intelligence is pretty good, and I'm sure we get it a lot from Israel and others that are very good at it. We probably just copy it down. We just look over their shoulders and copy it. United Kingdom. Oh, well, this is weird. They're preparing the Straits of Hormuz deployment to clear mines once the U.S. and Iran reach a deal, which my understanding was that the minesweepers that UK had were like 4 of them that came from that area, were donated to Ukraine like a few years ago, and they have been training the Ukrainians to operate and manage those things, the Ukrainian Navy. Of course, they can't get them into the Black Sea or anything because they can't get through Turkey either. There can't be any that kind of stuff is going to go through Turkey. So they're kind of stranded at the Ukraine and at the UK. They're still docked over there and they're still getting trained over there. And I read a month ago or so that they had offered to go to the Strait of Hormuz and start working to get the mines out of the water. Well, now I read this article. It says hundreds of British sailors were preparing to deploy to the Strait of Hormuz to help clear mines, which I understood when the Ukrainians were going to do it, they were going to take some British sailors with them. But now maybe it flipped. Maybe they're going to be the British sailors and the Ukrainians going to go with them. I have no idea. But I know they're trying to repair some of their image that Trump has talked about being not helpful, not following NATO, not helping in this Iran thing, which they have more to gain than anybody. I mean, all of Europe does, and they turn their back on the United States and don't help. Maybe this is them trying to reach in and do something. And they say once a deal's reached between U.S. and Iran, the RFA Lime Bay, docked off the coast of Gibraltar, will leave for the Middle East. So that sounds like one they didn't give to the United Kingdom. The vessel's being loaded with ammunition and mine-hunting sea drones equipped with sonar is expected to join the British destroyer HMS Dragon and allied ships, providing air support before transiting the Suez Canal en route to the Persian Gulf. So I don't think any of these things have gotten close to the Arabian Sea or anything yet, to my knowledge. Iran could deploy a huge variety of mines throughout the strait, according to Commander Jim Britton, head of the Royal Navy's Mine and Threat Exploration Group. The mines could be rocket propelled, tethered by cables, or placed on the seabed and may be triggered by sound, movement, or light. The autonomous systems aboard the Lime Bay use sonar to scan the seabed and surrounding waters, mapping potential threats in thoroughly half the time of traditional ships. And I know the United States have some of that too. I mean, we have those things, and then they send drones down. After they get potentials, they send the drones down to actually put an eye out for them, and those drones can actually disarm them. Some of them by blowing up. The drone just blows up. That seems like a waste of a drone. I think I would plan a charge on it and get the heck out of Dodge and then blow the charge up. I don't know. I've never seen them or how they're configured. I've just read about them. A Hezbollah chief rejects talks with Israel. Well, that's good. They want to take over Lebanon and they want to reject talks with Israel. But that seems to be the way of these terrorist type organizations. They don't work like normal populations. If United States was being bombed and civilians were dying and all that, we'd be clamoring for an end of it. I think these guys can put up with pain much more than we do. Pain and starvation and lack of resources. But according to the Hezbollah leader, they urged Lebanon to abandon plans for direct talks with Israel as pressure builds ahead of a new round of negotiations between the two nations. Well, it sounds like Lebanon wants to deal. Lebanon has been asking for Hezbollah to get out. Direct negotiations are commonly unacceptable as a pure gain for Israel. Abandon the direct negotiations. Do not give the Americans so that it gives it to Israel. Don't be with them and stab us in the back. Well, I think Trump has convinced a lot of those countries, and Lebanon surprises me. But as far as Saudi Arabia, which we had a relationship with for quite some time, not under Biden. They didn't like Biden. That was obvious. But under Trump, they very much do. And I really didn't know about Qatar and United Arab Emirates. I mean, I knew United Arab Emirates had F-16s that they bought. My son was stationed there for a while as somebody that would help their maintenance guys on some of the F-16s and stuff and the training. I mean, he helped train and do some of the maintenance training on procurement, all that kind of stuff, on parts. But their programs with the United States are stronger than I really imagined, and it sounds like they more want to partner with us, and that's evidenced by Iran bombing these guys. They look at them as friends, allies, and enemies all at the same time, which is I don't know how we do that. I mean, how can you be all of the above at the same time? It's a weird concept to me to be all of that. Article on the Southern Poverty Law Center that I read. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center, I hear their name quite a bit. In fact, Edward used to throw it around a lot to me. I think he still does. I haven't heard from him today. He's probably taking the day off. The Southern Poverty Law Center, puts a lot of rules out about, well, you're racist if you do this, you're a white supremacist, they just, and they put a lot of money into supporting civil rights, what they call civil rights organizations and stuff, but they're into DEI and equity and the whole bit. And to me, a lot of the stuff they do and say over the years, I've just looked at as just absolutely ridiculous, in line with some of the other ridiculousness that I see from the Democratic Party, which destroys businesses. And let me see, but they got indicted recently by the Department of Justice, and I think everybody knows that. It was kind of a shock to me. I never would have guessed that the Southern Poverty Law Center was spending money keeping what they called hate groups, like white supremacy groups and those kind of things, KKK, sending them money to keep them alive so that they could have something to fight against. It's weird, but now their Justice Department, because of that, is focusing and examining the role that the Southern Poverty Law Center has played in distorting civil rights policy in recent years. So they want to take a look at it. And they say, well, it's unlikely that the hearing will yield anything new because we're going to have hearings and stuff. That's part of what Congress does is investigative hearings and stuff. And then, yeah, a lot of times it's Fifth Amendment. It doesn't, or lies or man, I don't know. And it's against the law to lie under oath. But I don't see enough prosecutions of that. I mean, how many times did Mayorkas sit there, raise his hand, say the borders are secure? The borders are secure. I guess they have a different definition of what secure is, I guess. They say it will bring much needed exposure to the malicious organization that has engaged in left-wing lawfare for years and corrupted our K through 12 schools. And when I thought of the Southern Poverty Law Center, of course, the lawfare comes into play, going after people that are political opponents of the left or of the DEI or the equity type things or the BLM. All those kind of things. And they just go after them and sue them into bankruptcy. I didn't think about the K through 12. Well, this says for over a decade, the Southern Poverty Law Center has leveraged its status as a civil rights organization to convince school districts to use its learning for justice standards, resources, and lessons in the name of social justice. I didn't associate that coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center. I don't know why, but I didn't know that. Well, the nonprofit's programming has been sold to highly empathetic educators as vital to reducing bias and hate, and that's how they sell it. Like if you study this social justice, you're going to reduce bias and hate. Fixing the achievement gap and addressing mental health issue. The idea is being peddled by the SPLC, anti-racism, white privilege, and whiteness. Well, it has apparently spread quickly through K through 12 education all over the whole country. And activist teachers, administrators, associations, teachers unions, and consultants. And the SPLC influence on K-12 is massive. And it's difficult to quantify all at the same time. Massive, but difficult to quantify. I don't know how it could be both, but apparently it is. It said, even though hundreds of districts use its content in lessons, its curricula, as resources on racial justice web pages and have adopted the organization's social justice standards, it's hard to nail down the totality of the organization's impact. And I guess that's what they're trying to do now. And it makes me wonder, have they not investigated these guys in the past? Have they not looked at the stuff they're doing in the past? Maybe not. Maybe not. They've been able to run amok because they're all lawyers and they'll sue you into oblivion if you go against them. Apparently, Trump's not afraid of that. Social emotional learning is part of their deal. Programs such as Second Step, Paranoia Education, and the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, they have integrated the SPLC's lesson and standards into their curricula and platforms. Tens of thousands of districts across the country have contracts with these entities. And the far left nonprofits programming and content are pushed through professional development, teachers unions, professional organizations such as the American School Counselor Association and the Association of Alaska School Boards, parent teacher associations, and State Department of Education. So I guess those tentacles go everywhere. And it's not just lawfare, apparently. They want to raise a whole new class of equity, bandits, just and diversity soldiers. Learning for justice content as supplemental material or used to steer dialogue on controversial topics. Regardless of the legal outcomes that await the Southern Poverty Law Center, the DOJ's indictment of the left-wing nonprofit has brought long overdue attention to the organization. For years, the Poverty Law Center has enjoyed unquestioned credibility within the K-12 education system, Hopefully, the indictment hearing and further exposure will bring into question the SBL's authority. In the meantime, parents, community members, and legislatures need to investigate their own school districts for these politically biased content and materials. Moreover, school districts need to purge from lessons, curricula, and resources any content that has originated from the organization. No child should be forced to learn from an organization that fights bias and hate by advancing their own biased left-wing ideology and labeling concerned parents as members of a hate group. It's real to think, but that's exactly what has been happening. Yes, and Obama put a lot of energy, and so did Biden put a lot of energy into FBI and federal officers investigating PTA. It looks like we should have been going after the SPLC, not the PTA. Let me see. Ilhan Omar. She's been in a lot of heat, because she deserves it, but she hates America. She speaks against America constantly. She loves Somalia, and she says that in her native language quite often in rallies and things. She has her constituents involved heavily in fraud and abuse. Whether or not she's tied to it is something to be explored. They don't know. She married her brother to cheat immigration. So there's a lot of things, but she seems unbothered. When she was asked about a newly proposed GOP resolution barring anyone foreign-born from serving in Congress. I don't even know if you knew that was happening. Yeah. And when she was asked about, well, how do you feel about this resolution barring foreign-born Congress? She said, well, good luck to her. And she's in reference to Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace, a Republican out of South Carolina. She announced Wednesday that she's proposing a constitutional amendment. Now, you think getting something through Congress is hard. Get a constitutional amendment through. That's why there's not many of them. They're difficult, but she's proposing one that would require any member of Congress, federal judges, or Senate-confirmed officers to be a natural-born citizen. The amendment would impose the same natural-born citizen standard required to presidents and vice presidents in the United States. And she was one of the three targeted that May specifically talks about, like, here's why we need this. The others were, let me see, Sherry Thandadar and Pramila Japal. All born in foreign countries, none were citizens by birth, all studied in the United States Congress, all making clear every single day their loyalty is not to America. Now, if you had to guess right now, how many are currently serving in Congress that are foreign-born? How many members are foreign-born serving in Congress? It's legal. The only requirement for natural-born is the president and vice president. Well, there's 26. I'm surprised. I didn't know there were that many. 19 Democrats, 7 Republicans. Omar says she's not concerned about the legislation having the legs to pass. If you hold power in American government, you should be a natural-born citizen, is what Mace told her. For too long, we have allowed foreign-born members to hold seats in this government while making clear their loyalty is not here. We see it every day. Changing the Constitution is not an easy feat, requiring approval from 2/3 of both the House and the Senate before an additional ratification of 3/4 of the United States. The proposal has not yet drawn widespread public backing from House GOP leadership or any large group of Republican co-sponsors. I don't know that they would get a 50% even, let alone the 3/4. I don't think there's a single Democrat that would vote for that. Mostly because it comes from Republicans, but they would give the country away. I mean, they're the ones that open up the border and want anybody and everybody to come in. But 3/4 of the U.S. States would have to ratify it, and 2/3 of both House and the Senate. That takes years, or something really big like the end of the Civil War and trying to get some stuff done real quick, where you get more unity. Omar was also asked by Representative Randy Fine out of Florida about the disqualifying dual loyalty act, which he introduced in October, and that would ban anyone from serving in Congress who has dual citizenship in another country. It would force individuals to renounce their foreign citizenship in order to serve or be considered for Congress. So Omar asked, well, "Who's that?" when he was asked about Representative Randy Fine, and I guess I would think she would know, but I guess that's just her way of passing shade. I think it's a fair argument to say you can only swear allegiance to one country, and if you're in Congress, that allegiance should be to America. That's Randy Fine. He said that. This bill ensures that the people making laws for our citizens are themselves fully committed to our country, not divided between two. I kind of like that one. I mean, I wouldn't be big on the must be natural born like the president. I mean, if you got somebody in here that like a Elon Musk, born in South Africa, but he's totally committed to the country, he holds a single citizenship. I don't see a big problem with that. I like the well, you got to give up your dual. I mean, I think that should be a no brainer. I wouldn't think anybody would complain about it. Well, I know they would. Yeah, I think the left would complain about it because there's some pretty famous favorite daughters on the left that have dual citizenship. Omar being one of them. They just love it. For some reason, they like the chaos. Vets are torching this new Senate hopeful from Maine. I think it's from, Maine, the Graham Plattner. Now, and you've been hearing about this guy for a little bit now. He is running for Senate in Maine against Susan Collins. And right now in the polls, when I looked him up again this morning, in the polls, he would beat Susan Collins. I think like 42 to 48, I think is the current polls. 42 to 48 with 11% undecided. And it's a long way to go beforehand. The more we find out about this Graham Plattner, I don't understand why people are hanging with him other than they hate Susan Collins or they're just convinced Democrats. And it doesn't matter. But a lot of more things are resurfacing now. When he became a candidate for the Senate, he deleted his accounts, his social media accounts, for good reason. Because he said some pretty horrible stuff. I mean, he is not a nice man. He was in the Army, but he has some posts that resurfaced that he called the Army full of fat, lazy trash, mocking soldiers who were shot multiple times. I'll tell you the exact ones he wrote. But, and other veterans are looking at this and they're writing in about it on social media. So that's why I don't know. Maybe Collins has a chance. And I'm not the biggest fan of Collins. Collins seems to be a pain in the butt many times. He's a Republican that just doesn't side with Trump very much. But Maine is a pretty blue state, and the fact that we even have a Republican on there is amazing. And I think she would be hugely better than Graham Plattner. Let's see, the Ricky Holland writes about this. Holland Ricky White's Vietnam veteran who served in the Army's 173rd Airborne. He said, "I am a decorated veteran, and people need to understand what serving in the Army cost me: congestive heart failure, bilateral hearing loss, COPD, sleep apnea, high blood pressure, hypothyroidism, PTSDs." The 173rd Airborne Brigade, also known as the HURD, was one of the first ground combat units to deploy to Vietnam, where it endured some of the war's most intense fighting. I understand ridicule better than most. I was ridiculed not only as a Vietnam veteran, but as a black man as well. I lost friends over there, and it still hurts to talk about. I often ask God, why did you spare me and not my friends? I believe God wasn't done with me when I came home, and that's why I continue trying to make a difference today. That is why comments like Graham's are so offensive. Now, Plattner deleted his Reddit account He's a veteran himself, too. He's a veteran. Now he's an oyster farmer up in Maine and challenging Susan Collins for the Senate. And he's leading in the polls. They haven't had the primary yet, but he's leading in the polls like 95, 99%. I mean, he's a shoo-in, and so is Collins. But Collins is more like 60-some%, and she's got like 2 or 3 different people running against her. But Collins is favored in Maine. I mean, the Maine likes her. Republican Party's frustrated with her and Murkowski, the main 2 that seem to be dual citizenships or dual political ships, at times. But they have an R by their name, which gives, helps with leadership. Even if you don't agree with her, it helps with leadership. I mean, if it comes down to there's no Republican that can beat her in the state, then of course you're going to support her to beat the Democrat. In one of the nation's most closely watched 2026 races, Plattner has leaned heavily. And I've read a lot of possibilities that's going to happen in this upcoming election on the Senate side. And everyone I've read gives the seat to Plattner recently because he's leading in the polls currently, and that's the numbers they're using, and they're using the momentum as it is right now, not what they think it's going to be. But that being said, even with losing of Collins, we'd remain a 51 majority, according to a lot of the things I've read. That's not a mandate, but if we lost Collins, I mean, even though Collins is a pain, she helps in helping to determine who the president of the Senate is. That's right, it's Thune. Well, still better than having a Democrat by a little bit. Still. One of Plattner's most controversial posts came in 2009 when he sharply criticized a soldier who was shot multiple times by the Taliban in 2012. He writes, "Dumb MF didn't deserve to live. At least his stupidity and fat butt wheezing are available for all future infantrymen to witness and to hold contempt. Poor marksmanship on the Taliban's part is the only reason this mouth breather made it home." I just can't imagine possessing that depth of hate. That's a disturbed individual to write that, in my opinion. To have that much hatred and that much disrespect for a U.S. serviceman that just took, bullets, fighting for America on foreign soils. Amazing. Well, there's another veteran from Iraq, Afghanistan, named Steve. He says, "As a Purple Heart recipient myself, having been wounded for my country, I find his comments to be especially vile. Mocking a fellow American that took enemy fire to protect his squad shows a lack of basic understanding of brotherhood and selfishness." Plattner wrote, I spent another 4 in the Army after the Corps. Well, I was very lucky to serve in some crap, hot units with good dudes. As a whole, the organization is absolutely trash. An organization is awful, full of fat, lazy trash who would rather not be in uniform. Bill Brown, who's a retired Navy SEAL, he says, a senator who calls soldiers trash and mocks a man's Purple Heart has shown who he really is. A senator votes to send soldiers to war, confirms the generals who lead them, and funds the equipment that protects them. And this guy wants to be a senator. And he doesn't back down when he's asked about stuff. He doesn't. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't back down. He doesn't say, "I'm a different person now." That's not who he is. I mean, he still has a chip on his shoulder about something. Kate Monroe is CEO of VetCom and a Marine Corps veteran, says, "Being a veteran does not make someone honorable. Honor is how you carry yourself, how you treat others, and how you speak about those who serve beside you. In this case, the uniform may have been earned, but respect clearly was not." John Rourke, a retired staff sergeant who saw combat during Operation Iraqi Freedom, second those sentiments from Monroe, saying that Plattner's mockery doesn't make him edgy or tough, but a disgrace to the uniform. Senator Joni Ernst out of Iowa, Republican. As a combat veteran, I've seen the cost of war up close. I've watched brave Americans come home with wounds visible and invisible that they'll carry the rest of their lives. Mocking servicemen for getting wounded or killed is absolutely despicable. These are our brothers and sisters, people who volunteered to put everything on the line for this country. Now, Plattler covered a tattoo now. He's trying to hide it. It's a Nazi symbol, a recognized Nazi symbol, not the most prominent one, but one of them. I guess during an interview in Portland, Maine, in October, Senator Tom Cotton, he served as an Army infantry officer with combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He said Plattner's comments about American servicemen are disgraceful, but it's what we should expect from a communist with a Nazi tattoo. Tim Shealy from Montana. Let's see the courageous Democrat vets defend this one. Can't wait to hear it. I don't know that they are. I mean, there's some. I think, and forgive me if I'm wrong. Shell will check this, but I think Hakeem Jeffries supports him. And if I remember right, there's some that don't. That don't. But I don't know. I think they'll rally around him. I think the Democrats are more prone to do that to despicable people than the Republicans are. And we've had some. Now, one of my favorite pastors, other than Tyrone Jones at Church for the City, he's I didn't write his name down. It's Cody, I think. Cody. God, I gotta look this up because I'm going to read about him here shortly. He's out of Chicago. Corey Berg, I think. Well, I'll get it later. But he writes so well. And I've read some of his stuff on the air before, and I'm going to read this. He's talking about American kids and about the price American kids are paying based on our culture and some of the things we've changed about our culture, not for the good. And he starts off by saying there's a lie that's spreading throughout the country, and it's been spreading in the last few decades. He says you don't need a father. And he's right. That has been a lie that's been spreading. He says this lie shows up in music, our politics, our policies, and sometimes even in our churches. The lie pretends to be compassionate, inclusive, and modern by passing no judgment. But if you walk the streets that I walk, if you sit with the children that I sit with, you will see the wreckage this lie leaves behind. When we lose fathers, we lose the core of our family structure. When we lose fathers, we lose the protection that the family and the neighborhood need. When we lose fathers, we lose morals, direction, and discipline. When we lose fathers, we leave gaping holes in children that they will struggle to fill. When we lose fathers, we lose a generation. Well said. And we're losing fathers. And I know I just talked about some of the military, and yes, we've lost some fathers in military conflict, but we're talking about just society saying you don't have to be married, and the government giving rewards. Rewards. Yeah. And there's people that don't get married on purpose so they can receive those rewards through government access. Support facilities that won't support you if you're married. So they keep income separate, and they keep everything separate, and the dads disappear. They end up not being needed, and there's a lot of social pressures that you don't need a dad. Well, he's going to talk a little bit about the impact. He says most people think that when we talk about fatherless, we're talking about Black America. Yes, our community carries a heavy burden here because he's a Black pastor, and he lives in a neighborhood that's predominantly Black in South Chicago. He says, tragically so. In 2023, 49% of Black children lived with one parent. 47.5% lived without a father in the home. In the poor demographics, the numbers are worse. But if we stop here, we ignore the bigger picture. Today, nearly 1 in 4 children in this country lives without a father in the home. And it astonishes me. How is this not a national crisis? Around 20% of white children live with one parent. Roughly a third of Hispanic people or children live single-parent homes. The share of the white youth in two-parent families has fallen from more than 82% in 1980 to about 76% today. And for Hispanic youth, 75% in 1980. 1980 to 67%. It's all going in the wrong direction. And now the impact. The vast majority of the criminals in our prisons grew up without a father. Research using national surveys, such as analysis from the Institute for Family Studies, shows that kids in married two-parent homes are far less likely to be a victim of violence or to witness violence in their neighborhoods. For every 1,000 children living with both married parents, about 36 encounter neighborhood violence. Amongst children living with never married mothers, it goes up to 102. That's almost 3 times the exposure to violence. Cities and neighborhoods where single parenthood is the norm, crime doesn't just inch up, it explodes. Recent national analysis from the Institute for Family Studies found that cities with high levels of single parenthood have 48% higher total crime rates, 118% higher violent crime rates, 255% higher homicide rates than cities where two-parent families are the norm. Chicago census tracks with lots of single-parent households see 226% higher violent crime, 400% higher homicide than what it is in a two-parent household. The lie has a price, that lie being that you don't need a father. The cure to all of this that I've constantly advocated for is marriage. I want to officiate at more marriages than funerals. Marriage is the answer to fatherless. It's the truth. Couldn't be plainer. Children born into married households are far less to be poor. In 2021, the federal government reported 6.8% of children in married households lived in poverty. In female-held households with no male spouse, the number's 37.1%, from 6.8 up to 37%. Marriage still matters even when it comes to different levels of education. A single mother with a high school degree faces a poverty rate of 39%. A married couple with the same education, poverty rate 9%. These are huge numbers. The most damning statistic, if we were returned to 1980 levels of married parenthood, child poverty would be about 17% lower and family median income about 10% higher. Stronger marriages don't just help individuals, they lift entire communities. We're running around like chickens with our heads cut off, screaming about how white supremacy is the biggest driver of inequities in our nation. Getting married and staying married would do far more than most, if not all, policies to lower disparities. But here, the key thing for me is that I know from personal experience. Marriage stabilizes men. I think that's true. You know, I've been married 2 years almost. Next month it'd be 2 years. After married for 36 years and divorced. And I was single for quite some time, and I don't think I was as productive as I could be. And I think Helen, I know she looks at me a little inquisitively. I thank Helen for making me a better man. I do. I've said it many times. I said, thank you for making me better. And he points that out. It stabilizes men. It gives them a higher value than self-worship or the glamour of gang life. I've seen marriage move men away from crime. When a man stands at the altar before God, commits to a wife and children, he's swearing to a higher way of life that's greater than any miserable gang can provide. Yeah, and marriage is a commitment to God. I don't know that everyone sees it that way. Um, but biblical marriage is a covenant with God to protect and the marriage and stuff. But it's a covenant with God. It's not a covenant with your wife. I mean, you make commitments. The covenant's to God. And if you're paying attention, that's impactful. Despite all these facts and plain common sense, there are professors, activists, and pundits who insist on the lie that fathers don't matter. They say love is love. It's as long as someone cares. The structure of the family does not matter. They warn us about masculinity as if it were the devil that needs to be slayed. Yeah, toxic masculinity. We've heard a lot about that. And it's destroying us. And some of these numbers he points out where some of the single mothers have 4 times the poverty rate, 4 times the chance of having violence and stuff. And it's unfortunate. I've even heard some of them say that advocating for fatherhood is blaming single mothers instead of recognizing their sacrifices. I cannot tell you how many single mothers I know who would gladly welcome a good man into their lives. The lie that fathers do not matter has been one of the most destructive forces in our society, and we must push back. Fathers matter. Fathers are not disposable. And I think we look at it like that. Particularly when you start talking about famous couples in Hollywood and stuff like that, that it's, disposable. It's not family. It's just a husband. And that's not biblical. To be a father is one of the highest callings a man can have in this earth. To be a father means you are responsible for the lives you bring into this world. You create life. And it is your duty to mold that life into a mind capable of character, courage, and real freedom. The shame is that we have allowed ideological forces to weaken the sacred bond and call it progress. The first step back is simple. Tell the truth. Fathers matter. And our children cannot flourish without them. I like this guy a lot. And you talk about sacrifice. I mean, he's a pastor in one of the roughest cities, the roughest towns, the roughest neighborhoods in the nation, Southside Chicago. And I read an article he put out after he traveled across the country, where he went through rural areas and all over the place, and to the point where he had a foot problem from walking so much, and he had to go back to Chicago. And he was disappointed when he got back because he saw the same thing. He saw the destruction. He saw the neighborhood destroying each other, and he wrote on that after his travels and all that, he wanted to emphasize the problems in South Chicago in any neighborhood doesn't come from white supremacy. It doesn't come from toxic masculinity. It comes from within, and the neighborhood's destroying each other, and they're blaming it on all this other stuff. And I'm paraphrasing them. Those aren't quotes. I don't have it in front of me. But realization they got to pull their own. They got to do their own. And of course, the marriage thing and the father and the family is something he's really focused on and making it safe. And he wants the streets safe in South Chicago. Now, to tackle something like that, great respect for that pastor and looking at reality, and rather than saying we're all victims of a bad society, we're all victims of bad culture, we're all victims of white supremacy, we're all victims of toxic man, forget it. You're not a victim of anything other than yourself. And I think it would be self-evident in our country. We have success everywhere across the board, everywhere. And yet we whine and we want equity. Like, just give it to me enough already. I don't want to earn it. Happy Memorial Day. Go out and think of those that we've lost in protection of the rights of all of us to do the things that we do, including talking on social media today and radio normally. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a great day. This is Mortgage One Studios with Russ Clark.